Okay, folks, we're going to, with apologies for those of you here on time, we're running a little late partly because there's a lot of people trying to get into this building and get through security. But I think we have two of our first three panelists here. So I think the other one is en route to this room. So I think maybe we'll bring up, if Tom Waters and Adrian Holder could come up maybe, and we'll begin with a few brief opening remarks from myself and my co-chair, Roxanne Prasad, and then begin the first panel of testimony. So again, I'm Brian Kavanaugh, chair of the Housing Committee of the Senate. I'm joined by Roxanne Prasad, chair of the Social Services Committee, and I welcome all of you to this public hearing to examine issues related to homelessness, housing insecurity, and affordable housing. It's a busy day in New York, and with many senators here for their one day in the city this week. We've been spending a lot of time in Albany working on the budget, but we do expect other senators to be in and out during the course of the day. And we have a very long and a list of people testifying today, and so we'll be here for a while today, but we do hope to get through the entire list during the course of the day. We've spent a lot of time on the Housing Committee and the Social Services Committee focusing on ways to make New York a better place for all New Yorkers, but especially those who are facing housing insecurity. And I'll obviously let the chair of the Social Service Committee discuss the work of the Social Services Committee on this matter. But with respect to housing, we began last year with a very robust look at our tenant laws, and we passed some landmark legislation last June on that matter, pursuant to many hearings we had throughout the state. In addition, we've did an investigation of code enforcement and found serious deficiencies in the manner in which code is enforced, especially in smaller localities throughout the state. That resulted in a report last summer and a package of legislation that passed the Senate a few weeks ago. We've also been tackling fair housing issues, particularly in response to the Newsday investigation that revealed widespread and very troubling discriminatory behavior in the Long Island housing market. And that is an ongoing process. We'll be having additional hearings and perhaps some legislation and budgetary action on that issue as well. And of course, we are in year 4 of a 5-year capital plan announced by the governor and the legislature 4 years ago that is intended to provide capital for a wide range of housing programs, including public housing and supportive housing, and just routine efforts to increase the housing stock, especially for people whose income and assets are not sufficient to allow them to buy decent affordable housing on the open market. Having said all that, there's a widespread perception that I share and many members of the Senate share that we have not been doing enough to address the most visible aspects of our affordable housing crisis, which is the growing number of people in our state who are homeless. And that is a problem that, here in New York City, where I represent, is particularly notable, and with many people living in public places that are unsafe. I represent Chinatown, where we had a particularly horrible manifestation of that problem, where 5 people sleeping in open places were bludgeoned in the dead of night, and 4 of them were killed. But at the same time, we have numerous families living in shelter. We have a school system with more than 30,000 children who are clients of the Department of Homeless Services, and well over 100,000 children who the Department of Education considers homeless. While this problem has many aspects to it, one of the major aspects that seems to be driving this is a increasing difficulty of people to be able to find permanent housing that is affordable, increasing difficulty of agencies that are running shelter to transfer people to move them to permanent housing, and of course difficulty of people who are living in public spaces getting out of that situation and into permanent housing. So we hope to hear a great deal today about all the aspects of that problem, particularly those that relate to affordable permanent housing. And so without further ado, let me thank, first of all, the staff that helped get this together, Owen and Dennis on the and Roxanne Prasad and the Social Service Committee staff, and Amber Marshall and Nick Rangel and Andra Stanley, my legislative counsel, have done a lot of work getting ready for today, and Dan Mosier, who's running our time clock. And I'd also like to begin, because sometimes I forget to do this, by thanking our great audio-visual team that are both hopefully making sure all of you can hear us in this room, and also are responsible for getting this hearing out onto the internet, so people who can't be physically present today can view the proceedings as well. So again, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Roxanne Prasad.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming out this morning on this windy winter day as we're winding down February. Thank you to Senator Kavanaugh for having us convene this hearing today, because as you know, we're in the midst of formulating the budget, and our committees we're fighting in our committees to ensure that housing is the most important topic that we're speaking of. In New York City particularly, there are too many people who are sleeping on the cold streets, too many people who are homeless. Across the state, this is not a situation that's unique to New York City, but New York City is hit the hardest. We see, as you know, in the Social Services Committee, we just passed these HSS legislation. We're hoping to get that through. In addition to that, Senator Kavanaugh's home voucher legislation, we're hoping to get that through. We're hoping that we'll have enough funding so that we will not be having the same conversation again next year, saying, what are we doing to ensure people are remaining in their homes? We're asking you to bring us your ideas, have the conversation with us. Tell us, what should we be doing? Should we be looking at? You know, too often we put forward programs and we think it's the right thing to do, and then we are not seeing the return on the investment that we expected. So today we're asking you to share your information with us, share your expertise with us. You're there every day. You know what it's like when people are coming to you, when you have people who are working but they just cannot afford to pay the rents to stay in the apartments. I was at a shelter system the other day, and the person who was one of the women who was there with her children is a person who works for a city agency that administers vouchers. Think of that. Someone who has to deem someone eligible for a voucher could not afford the same that she's fighting for. And she didn't qualify for a voucher. She ended up in the homeless situation. There's something wrong with that. If I'm sitting across from you and I'm making a determination that you need assistance, but I'm sitting here saying, oh gosh, I'm helping you, but I have nowhere to go. I can't help myself. There's something wrong with our system. We have to fix the system so that we should not be having the same conversation about homelessness and home insecurity in New York State next year. We have to fix it in this budget. Otherwise, what are we really doing? So thank you all for coming out here today. And before I close, Francie, we really have to thank you. 8:30, she was here. She was already set up. So we are ready to hear from you. So thank you all very much for being here today.
So for our first panel, those of you who are here can join us. We appreciate it.
Is she coming?
Thank you for. I'm Tom Waters from the Community Service Society of New York, a housing policy analyst, and I want to thank both committees for this opportunity to comment on the role of rent assistance in preventing and responding to homelessness. The Community Service Society is a nonprofit that addresses problems facing low-wage workers in their communities in New York City, especially including the effects of the city's chronic housing shortage. And the shortage of affordable housing is the preeminent cause of homelessness. The private housing market provides far too little housing at rents that low-income New Yorkers can afford. And much of our governmental housing effort, unfortunately, in the past 40 years has been directed at households with incomes much higher than those most at risk of becoming homeless. Back before Reagan, we used to have a housing policy that was designed to help the poorest people in society, the public housing and the privately owned subsidized housing and the voucher programs that came before that still exist, but they're not growing as the population and the number of low-income people grows. Instead, we build housing for people that make $40,000, $50,000 a year who need and deserve help because the private market doesn't work for them, but they're not the ones who are at risk of becoming homeless. This problem is not unique to New York City. I usually only comment about New York City, but New York State has 1.6 million low-income renter households with incomes less than twice the poverty threshold, but only 1.5 million houses or apartments with rents at the top end of that distribution can afford. So that's why 78% of the state's low-income tenants pay unaffordable rents, more than 30% of their income in rent, and 42% pay more than half their income in rent. New York City is notorious for the rate of unaffordable rents here, but those statewide rates of unaffordability are almost exactly the same as the city rates. There are parts of the state where affordability is a little bit better than New York, but there's also Long Island, Rochester, and a lot of the state's smaller cities where the situation is actually worse than in New York City. And households that are paying these unaffordable rents are strained. They have less money to spend on necessities like food, clothing, childcare, transportation, and health care. That can lead to problems that make you lose your job. One problem leads to another. It spirals out of control, and homelessness can result, especially for the lowest income households. So that's why housing is the essential solution to our homelessness crisis. But we're going the wrong way. The stock of affordable housing in the state is shrinking at a rate of about 2% a year. And the housing that we're building to replace the lost affordable housing isn't affordable enough. Although I should say that New York City has made important strides in the past 6 years, raising the share of housing that's affordable to really poor people, but it's still the case that more than 80% of the new affordable housing constructed even here is targeted to families making more than about $29,000 a year, which is still too high. So we need to shift away from, and the reason that we are building housing for this sort of middle-ish income group of people is that's what the subsidy tools that we get from the federal government are good for. We have subsidies to create housing, but not to operate it once it's created. So the tenant's income has to support a rent that pays for operations. And that's too much for about a third of the people of the city and maybe a quarter of the people of the state. The solution is an operating subsidy that can take the form of something like the subsidy that the federal government gives to public housing authorities to operate public housing, or it can be something like the Section 8 voucher, which a household can take to a landlord, any landlord that's obeying the law, and use it to pay part of their rent. It's very encouraging that in the past, during this election season, 5 of the 6 Democratic candidates for president have promised to greatly expand Section 8 vouchers. 3 of them say they would make everyone who's income eligible able to receive a voucher instead of about a quarter of those people, income eligible people who receive it now. That would be a very good thing. It would cost a lot of money, $5 billion plus for New York State alone, 1 million households. But we don't expect that to happen right away, right? The electing one of the Democratic candidates who's promised to do that will not make it happen right away. So in the meantime, New York State needs to act. And there are 2 excellent proposals to create new rent assistance programs before you. There's Home Stability Support, which is Senate Bill 2375 by Kruger, and the Housing Access Voucher Program, Senate Bill 7628 by Kavanaugh. They're both rent assistance proposals that would be targeted to the people who are either already homeless or face the most immediate risk of losing their homes. In other words, not everyone who should be getting rent assistance based on their income, but only the people in the worst emergencies. And that's what it makes sense for New York State to do now while we wait for better federal policy. Home Stability Support is structured as a supplement to public assistance benefits, and it would be administered by social service agencies. The Housing Access Voucher Program is more directly modeled on federal Section 8, and it would be administered by local public housing authorities or by the state's Homes and Community Renewal Agency, which is itself a public housing authority. One important advantage of the Housing Access Voucher Program is that it can be used to assist individuals or families who don't receive public assistance benefits, including those receiving supplemental security income and those who are not eligible for any income support because of their immigration status. I think that's an important advantage, although both are great programs, and the most important thing is to fund either of them as much as possible, because these aren't proposals to help everyone who needs help. What really matters is how much money and how many people we can get help to. Therefore, the Community Service Society of New York strongly supports both of these proposals. Thanks.
Great. So we'll go to Adrian and then come back for questions. That's okay.
So, good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I want to first say that I am suffering or trying to recover from a cold, a very bad cold. So if I get in a coughing jag during this, please forgive me. I want to thank Chair Kavanaugh and Chair Prasad and the members of the committees and New York State Senate for holding this really important hearing. And I appreciate the opportunity to testify before the standing committees on housing, construction, and community development and social service on behalf of the Legal Aid Society, examining issues related to homelessness, housing insecurity, and affordability. We agree with the committee that access to safe and secure housing is a fundamental right, and we are eager to work with the committees to ensure New Yorkers throughout the state can take advantage of this fundamental right. I'm Adrienne Holder, and I'm the attorney in charge of the civil practice of the Legal Aid Society. And I remain extremely proud of this body and the things that you all have accomplished, and the fact that you're trying to move New York State towards having a real commitment by showing through not only its laws, but even with its budget, the commitment and the values that we hold, that people deserve fair and affordable and adequate housing, and that we all know that housing insecurity or instability and eviction is the leading driver of poverty for our communities. And we see that at the Legal Aid Society. Without housing, you don't have good health care policy. Without safe and affordable housing, you don't have good education policy. New York State is in the midst of the worst homelessness crisis since the Great Depression. According to the United States Housing and Urban Development 2019 Annual Homeless Assessment Report, since 2010, homelessness has increased across the state by an astounding 40%. And we like to boast in New York about our leadership on the important issues of our time, and here is a place where we're first in the nation. New York State has the highest per capita rate of people who are homeless. And just in January of last year, there were over close to 93,000 people in homeless shelters, or part of the count of unsheltered homeless. But the January count was misleading. Counting unsheltered homeless individuals on one of the coldest nights of the year guarantees an undercount. So indeed, the Coalition of the Homeless has shown that we think that during the 2018-2019 school year, nearly 253,000 New Yorkers were homeless, staying in shelters or doubled up with family and friends. And part of the reason that the homeless population rose sharply during this administration is that the governor has withdrawn state resources for housing subsidy programs and delayed for years funding a new state supportive housing program. Further, this administration has shifted the cost of shelter from New York State to New York City. And last year, the state budget reduced the state's contribution to shelter costs even further by requiring the Human Resources Administration to cover costs of the family assistance benefits previously reimbursed by federal funds. The administration's budget decision exacerbate the homelessness crisis, and current budget proposals are woefully inadequate. And as these committees have indicated, the homelessness crisis cannot be addressed without also grappling the affordability crisis. And a recent report found that communities, and Thomas said this, that spend more than 32% of their income can expect a more rapid increase in homelessness. The New York State Comptroller has found that almost half of the renter households in New York State are rent burdened, and 1 in 4 renter households were considered severely rent burdened. So in raw numbers, that means 1.6 million households pay more than 30% of their income towards their rent, and nearly 900,000 households pay more than 50% of their incomes towards rent. Rockland, Bronx, Greene, Suffolk, and Tompkins counties experience the highest proportion of New Yorkers with high rent burdens. Low-income tenants with high rent burdens have less income to spend on food, health care, clothes, childcare, and other child-related expenses, and this leads to housing insecurity and, of course, worse educational and health outcomes for families. And, of course, we think, and we know through studies, that it is the driving indicator of poverty. So where we stand on the package that has been presented. Homes, Stability and Support, HSS. Yes, we say yes to HSS. Hashtag yes. But we see the financial, at the Legal Aid Society, the financial and the human costs of homelessness in the communities every day. So HSS is an essential component to addressing the homelessness crisis in an effective and financially responsible manner. I know you all are concerned about the investments that you make. This is a great investment. We know that HSS is going to be one of the leading ways that we're going to be able to stabilize our families and make sure that as a rent supplement, that we are not going to see the continued rise of evictions and home instability in our communities. Excuse me. Although in New York City and a few other counties, we have state-approved rent supplement programs, the state has kept the subsidy unrealistically low and imposed erroneous restrictions. In New York City, certain families who are at risk of homelessness may be eligible for family, homelessness, and eviction prevention supplement, which will provide a maximum of $1,534 a month for rent for a family of 4. However, FEPS, as it's called, will only become available when a family is sued in housing court and actually at the brink of eviction. Further, it provides no relief for families with no minor children, singles, or seniors. And it's not available outside of New York City. And so this is why, at this time, we know that HSS is going to be the best way to stabilize these families. It would create a statewide housing supplement program providing payments of up to the fair market rent. HSS would not be limited to families with minor children, and it would not require that households be sued before they could receive help. And lastly, we urge the passage of the Housing Access Voucher Program. It's time for New York State to create a statewide Section 8 program to provide low-income New Yorkers with access to safe and affordable housing. We need to use every tool possible to address this crisis of affordability and homelessness. Other states and localities have created their own Section 8 programs, including our neighbors in Massachusetts and Connecticut. It's time for us to join them. After years of federal austerity budgets, it's unrealistic for us to expect the federal government to expand the Section 8 voucher program, even though it has a proven track record of providing families and individuals not only with housing security, but it also has been a driver of stabilizing our families solidly back into the middle class. The Housing Access Voucher Program would be administered by the public housing authorities throughout the state. So currently, those public housing authorities administer the federal Section 8 program. Most of the provisions of the new Housing Access Voucher Program are similar to the federal Section 8 program. So counties and localities would not be administratively burdened by having to train workers on a new program. Additionally, the voucher program includes a robust inspection requirement, ensuring that public monies do not go to landlords renting unsafe housing. The housing voucher program will provide homeless and low-income New Yorkers with affordable housing vouchers, capping the rent at 30% of household income, and increase housing stability as beneficiaries' incomes rise and fall. Like Section 8 vouchers, the voucher would cover between 90% and 110% of a community's fair market rent. The vouchers are not time limited, and beneficiaries will keep the vouchers as long as they need the assistance. The bill requires that at least 50% of all funding would go to individuals and families who are currently homeless, and this would prioritize the most vulnerable New Yorkers, ensure that they would not be overlooked or left behind. And then just if I might, I'd like to just make sure that everyone knows that as the Legal Aid Society, we support supportive housing and understand that there have been some commitments made, but the promise to deliver 20,000 new units by the governor, to date we only have 6,000. We need to see the remaining 14,000 units, and we urge the legislature to provide the capital appropriation necessary to support all housing for the remaining units. We also support a $3 billion in the budget this year for emergency capital improvements in public housing. The state of repair or disrepair of our public housing is in large part not only due to the underspend by or the underfunding by the federal government, but also by long-standing underfunding by the state, with previous governors and the current governor not taking the responsibility and letting it lie in the cities to deal with the state public housing system. And we also would like to see the elimination of 420A tax exemption here, which is a foregone property tax revenue at an annual rate of $1.6 billion. Not a good investment, because the revenue provided in this program has had a minor contribution to affordable housing in New York State. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both of you very much for your testimony, and also for all of your work over many years on these issues. If I may just begin, we're, as my co-chair of this hearing noted, and each of you alluded to, we're in the midst now of a state budget process that would be an opportunity to fund additional programs like the ones we're talking about today. You okay? So I'd just like to, could either of you talk a little bit about the cost of these programs, of the cost of providing rental subsidies, and particularly the cost of that relative to providing shelter and the other costs that come with being homeless?
Well, the Section 8 costs about $12,000 a year per household in New York City, and more like $6,000 a year in much of the rest of the state. So for an average of maybe $10,000 a year statewide. So that's a substantial amount of money, but it is much less than it costs to keep people in homeless shelter. So I think you could use Section 8 to house 5 or 10 families in decent housing that's passed a housing quality standards inspection for the cost of one family in shelter.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that makes it a very good investment. What Tom has given to you, it makes it a very good investment. And also, it's not to mention the fact that there are untold costs that we have with people's health failing because of their housing insecurity and being in the shelter system. The fact that so many of our folks actually lose their jobs because there is a lot of upheaval with children going into shelter and sometimes not being able to stay in the same school system. All of that disruption also has unintended, or I would say perhaps there are consequences that folks just don't care about because of the group and the community of people that are impacted. But those have additional costs to the state and locality, and it's a human cost also, that not making the proper investments in our people, we're not going to see it down the line in terms of them being able to be healthy and happy and productive folks here in New York.
And one of the arguments we often get when we talk about permanent housing for people who are homeless is that, this is a big, complicated problem. There are a lot of factors. There's, people who are homeless have many challenges and they need services, and it's not just about housing. Perhaps particularly Ms. Holder, because your organization represents a lot of clients. To what extent is housing, affordable housing resources, a critical aspect of addressing the homelessness problem?
I mean, it's essential. And so they try to divide up our communities by trying to say that the homelessness problem is about people coming out of prison and not being able to return home. Or they try to say that it's a mental health issue. Or they try to say that it's just about folks who don't want to pay their rent or don't understand what it means to have to support themselves. But it's so much deeper than that. The housing problem is a multifaceted problem, just like healthcare is a multifaceted issue, or education opportunities. What it is it's essential. Like I said before, housing is a leading cause of and driver of poverty. We have people, and we represent people who live in shelters, who go to work. They have two parent family households, go to work every day, but cannot afford these exorbitant rents. But we also do have people who do need some support. So supportive housing isn't necessary. It's a range of issues, but one thing that is clear, and you see in all the data show that once people's housing is stable, people then can work on all those other issues, whether it's ill health, whether it's making sure that seniors actually have the longevity and the quality of life that they deserve, whether it's about children being able to excel in school. All of those things are smoothed out once people's housing is made secure. Housing insecurity is a driver of poverty and homelessness as well. The idea that every 2 or 3 years people have to move and find new shelter and new homes, it does not work for our families. And once we get people's housing right, you're going to be able to deal with all the other issues that they face. But we don't like the fact that they try to divide up this issue and say that they should only tackle it as an issue about reentry from prison or about mental health. It is an affordability crisis that is crippling our state.
Thank you. So I think I'll turn it over to my co-chair, Senator Prasad.
Thank you. Hey. So I have a question here that was asked of us. In local social service districts, so Adrian, I wanted you to start with this. The determining eligibility for eviction prevention assistance has become more complicated over the years because it often requires a notice of eviction to be placed before offering preventative assistance. How many would have access to assistance where this requirement be removed? And what is your suggestion for fixing that?
So I would have to do a little bit more research. That's hard for me to actually tell you for New York State. But what I can tell you is that, currently we see about 300,000 folks go into housing court every year. I think, or finding themselves perhaps being sued for housing issues. And of that, we think that a significant amount, probably about 80% of those folks, are people who are considered low income, and definitely people who are probably paying more than 30% of their income in rent. The idea that even those people oftentimes don't make the requirements under social services policies and programs to be eligible for certain types of long-term rental assistance is a huge factor that some of them don't necessarily get the measures that are going to stabilize them. And so I would have to dig deep and look at some of our statistics and get back to you on that. But I do know that with the passage of HSS and actually having a state Section 8 program, we would see many, many more people not even having to go, people being able to be stabilized in place, not being sued for rent, as well as people who find themselves being sued, many more families and single households being eligible to have a long-term solution to their housing insecurity. But I'd have to get back to you all about a real
Did you?
statistic. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hold on one second.
Uh-huh.
Both HSS and the voucher program allow eligibility upon rent demand.
Right. Right. So, yes. And so, just to be clear, both HSS and the state Section 8 program would allow eligibility. You would find that upon the rent demand and not having to be hauled into court.
Another question. It pertains to people with multifamily homes and landlords residing in the building that they own, and they feel that with the sweeping changes that we've made, we have not really taken care of the small landlords, the small homeowners. They're renting their apartments, and if they're not being paid rent, they have really no recourse. And the possibility of them losing their homes is real. How do you address that? Because many of the renters are coming to you for assistance because they're not paying the homeowners, and the homeowner really has no recourse.
So, in terms of the small landlord issue, I mean, I think the idea that you could have, guaranteed rent subsidies or supplements that would actually stabilize people in place or in their units, I think is a benefit to all landlords everywhere. It's a wonderful investment that folks would be able to have affordability and be able to remain in place. The issues that small landlords may have, to me, with having folks who can be able to pay rent, these things help to minimize that, just as the Section 8 program during the 60s and 70s actually helped a lot of landlords to be able to get real rents that allowed them to maintain buildings in neighborhoods that oftentimes would not necessarily have demanded such things. Moving forward, I think we're seeing it can have a real stabilizing factor, and I don't think that would be a problem at all. And then when you look at the protections that tenants have and the protections that landlords have enjoyed, I really do feel that landlords are not harmed in any way by this. In fact, I think they are the beneficiary. And, other issues around affordability and stability are met through these programs.
Okay. Why I asked that question, because we currently have a couple of small homeowners in part of my district that are going through those issues, and they feel that they're not receiving the assistance when they're coming to organizations, the same kinds of assistance that renters are receiving.
You're saying assistance on foreclosure prevention?
Yeah.
Okay,
And just as assistance in getting some part of the rent. For example, I have a person who's owed rent for nearly a year now. And so they've been going back and forth. I think, I'm not going to say who's representing the renter, but the homeowner feels that we have created a situation where there's no assistance for the homeowner.
So I actually don't think that that's the case.
That's why I'm asking.
Right,
Out there,
that is
yes.
not the case. I think that there are a tremendous amount of programs for landlords and even small landlords to be able to deal with the issues that they have in maintaining their buildings. But to the extent that they have renters or tenants that owe rent, I believe that these kind of enhancements of rent supplements, as well as taking advantage of some other types of programs that are currently available, although sometimes those programs are stopgaps, can help to get to where they need. I'd be curious to understand, more facts, but yes, to the extent that what we're seeing is we're trying to prioritize stabilizing housing, and that is not going to be anything but a benefit to those people who actually provide the housing. What it may not be a benefit, the issues that you're talking about, like if you're talking about landlords who are facing foreclosure, that's a completely separate issue. And we do have foreclosure units as legal services programs, and there are other folks who can represent landlords through the foreclosure process. That is another set of priorities that hopefully the state will continue to invest in to make sure that people can keep their homes. And we are particularly concerned about, owner-occupied units, where we would want those owners to definitely be able to maintain their buildings as well as the wonderful housing that they're providing to the community.
Thank you. Hi, Amy.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Apologies for being late. May I?
Sure.
Okay, well, good morning to both of you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. I'm here representing Neighbors Together. We are a community-based organization in central Brooklyn. We are a soup kitchen. We provide one-on-one individualized, what we call stabilizing services, and we also have an organizing arm called the Community Action Program, where we involve our members in community organizing, policy advocacy, and leadership development. I'm here today because increasingly over the last at least 5 years, our members have said, and the data shows, that homelessness and affordable housing is the true crisis that people are experiencing, and that it is undermining their ability to be able to stabilize their lives in all of the other ways that they would like. In the last 5 fiscal years, we have seen the rate of homelessness amongst our members increase by over 10%. That's homelessness and people who are unstably housed. So pulling for the last calendar year, we see that we have over 57% of our membership, which is above 10,000 people, who are homeless or unstably housed. About 20% are living in shelters. That's increased. There's a trend that it's slowly going upwards over the last couple of years. We have almost 20% living in three-quarter houses. 10% are doubled up, living with friends or relatives, couch surfing, and so on. And then there's another almost 7% who are living on the street. This is truly unconscionable, and it also doesn't make good sense for New York State. People need stable places to live that are safe and secure and permanent in order to be successful in all the other areas of their lives, and it is disruptive when they fall into homelessness, are worried about becoming homeless, or are trying to prevent eviction from their current place of living. So I'm here to just speak in support of the Housing Justice for All platform, and say that we need a statewide solution to the homelessness and unaffordability crisis. I think what often happens when we're talking about statewide solutions is that people try and paint the picture as though it's only a New York City problem, but I think that that's a really unfair and inaccurate way to talk about the homelessness crisis. We have seen homelessness rise in cities across New York State. And so from Neighbors Together's members' perspective, some of the things that we see most frequently are that the shelter allowance isn't enough, so people can't find safe and secure places to live. They end up going to situations like three-quarter housing, where there's, it's essentially a boarding house type of situation because they can't afford market rate rent and they don't qualify for vouchers. So that's one of the reasons that I'd like to speak in support of home stability support and the new Housing Access Voucher Program. We feel like they would give people a very significant opportunity to be able to actually get a safe, well-maintained place to live. HSS would pay up to 85%, and then localities could pay the additional 15% to get up to 100%, and that would really help people to access decent housing. Right now, at the current voucher rates, when you pull up a housing, so we run twice a week, housing search workshops at Neighbors Together, and when you pull up, on apartments.com or whatever sort of website you're on looking for apartments, you can find a handful of options at best. Half of them tend to be scams, and then you're in competition for all the other folks who have these deeply below market rate vouchers, and it's really problematic for people. And then on top of that, there's a problem of source of income discrimination, which we'll set aside for now. But what we really need is voucher programs to bring vouchers up to market rate rent so that people can get into decent apartments and then stay there. And then I think the other thing that's really important to talk about is the good cause eviction bill. A very high percentage of our members live in unregulated apartments, over 30, I think it's like 37%. And what we see so often is that tenants fall into homelessness because they have a lack of ability to enforce their legal rights in their apartments. I feel the good eviction bill would help address that. And even with with the voucher programs being passed, it also makes good sense to pass good cause eviction, because often what we see is people who have vouchers are moving into unregulated apartments, and at the end of the year, their landlord is deciding to raise their rent to a degree that they can no longer afford with their voucher. Good cause eviction would help to prevent that from happening and would allow landlords to raise the rent, but within a reasonable amount, so that it wouldn't be a sort of backwards way of evicting the tenant for no good reason. You know, and often what we see is that when tenants are in these unregulated apartments with vouchers or just, you know, struggling to make it work on a you know, a salary that's at the lower end of the spectrum, that they're living in places where the conditions aren't kept up, where there's, you know, mold or lack of essential services, or really just like all kinds of really terrible conditions that are unsafe, truly. And when they go to enforce their legal rights and ask for repairs, they are then evicted. You know, then the eviction case proceeds, and, you know, within a year's time, they're back in the same place that they were before, looking for housing with a voucher that doesn't pay enough money. So I think it's just important to say that the Housing Justice for All platform is a very common sense solution to some of the major problems that we see at Neighbors Together day in and day out. And I think that if the state, I think it's critical that the state take action now, because we are only continuing to see an increase in the number of people who are coming for help with housing and homelessness specifically. It was over 50% of all of our direct services last year, and that's a significant increase over the years that I've been there, which has been about 10. So it makes sense, and I know that the problem that comes up often when we talk about what are the policies we need to enact is money, and I think it's worth noting that we have 112 billionaires living in New York State, and that we have $525 billion worth of combined wealth between them, and that by and large, the vast majority of New Yorkers and even nationally support a tax on the ultra wealthy. And so that is a way to address the budget needs for making these common sense policies possible. And I urge you to move forward with the home stability support, the housing access voucher program, good cause eviction bill, and the revenue bills on the Housing Justice for All platform. And I thank you for your time.
So I think I'm just going to ask one question because, you know, mindful of the time, and we have a very long list of witnesses. But just can you just talk a little bit more about the prevalence of homelessness as a people who are facing eviction and homelessness as a sort of growing problem over time, how that has affected your organization, how it affects your clients, and how it affects the communities in which you're working?
Sure. What can I say? I mean, if you look around central Brooklyn, and what I hear from people who also live in upstate communities is that the unaffordability crisis is growing. You know, in central Brooklyn in particular, it looks like often gentrification, so empty lots that have been empty for 10 years that suddenly are new fancy buildings that people can no longer afford. And without some of these solutions to help keep people in place in their communities, they end up falling into homelessness. And then if they're lucky enough to find housing, they're being pushed to far-flung areas of the outer boroughs, you know, away from their social support networks. So there's a lot of destabilization there that we see at Neighbors Together, you know, people being forced to move far away from their kids' schools, from their doctors, from their jobs, and so on. And then, you know, what we also see increasingly is this cycle, you know, this like being homeless for many years in the shelter, trying to get access to a voucher. For the lucky people who do get access, then they're stuck looking with a below market rate voucher. Then if they're lucky enough to get into an apartment through a lot of hard work and a lot of enforcement against source of income discrimination, then they often are in the same place again a year later when their landlord decides not to renew their lease, or when they need to enforce against violations for essential services and things like that. So I just think overall we're seeing an incredible destabilization of our communities, and that people really need, New York State really needs an investment in these areas in order to prevent this from becoming an even greater crisis. I mean, 92,000 people across the state is an astoundingly high number, astoundingly high. And so, and in the last 8 years, homelessness has increased 36% under Governor Cuomo's tenure. So I think it's really important that we take stock and say this is a crisis and we need to have a solution of equal magnitude in order to address it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does,
Okay.
and thank you very much. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to end by thanking the three people on our first panel. And just to note that we do, each of you made the point that this is a statewide problem. We do have at least one or two witnesses today that are going to talk about this problem as it relates directly in other parts of the state. And I would also note that we had a roundtable with Dominic Montgomery of our Children and Families Committee and Social Services and Housing in Long Island to talk about homelessness and youth issues in particular, and that we are expecting to have a roundtable in Sullivan County to talk about how these issues are playing out in different parts of the state. And that's that's 2 weeks, I believe, on March 12th, but it'll be posted formally. And I also just, since we talked about foreclosure, I would note that there is an ongoing conversation about the homeowner protection program, which is a $20 million statewide program that funds services in every community to address foreclosure, and that is something that we need to, that funding currently expires on March 31st with this budget, and many of us have been working on making sure that continues as well. So we are dealing with these issues on multiple fronts. But again, thank you all for your testimony, and again for all the work that you do day in and day out to protect people.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
And Adrian, if you can
leadership.
give me those numbers, if you can. Oh, sure.
Thank you for your leadership. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, next up, we are going to have the Crown Heights Tenant Union and Make the Road. We have two folks, Esteban Giron and Teresa Ramirez. And just recognizing that we have a total of 18 panels of witnesses scheduled for today, and given that we are an hour into this hearing, what we're going to do is have 5 minutes from each person for the principal testimony, and then additional time for any questions from the panel. So we're going to switch that up. Are you gonna translate? Okay, great.
Would you like to go first?
Okay, so we'll do it simultaneously, or?
Is your testimony need to be translated?
No.
No, okay. I'm going to translate for Teresa.
Gotcha, okay, great. Okay,
So
so if you
ready?
could just begin by introducing yourself and your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Esteban Giron. I'm a member of the organizing committee of the Crown Heights Tenant Union, a tenant-led, all-volunteer union of tenant associations that fight against greedy slumlords and developers and the elected officials who do their bidding. I also serve on the board of directors of Tenants Political Action Committee, which helps support pro-tenant candidates like some of you sitting here today. Both organizations are proud members of the Upstate Downstate Housing Alliance, which is part of the Housing Justice for All campaign for a New York Homes Guarantee. Thank you to the chairs of the committees, Senator Kavanaugh, Senator Prasad, for bringing the Senate home to us today. By now, you're well aware of our legislative platform, so I won't bore you with too many details, but I want to make sure everyone here understands that the work we've been doing as a coalition is unprecedented in its scope. Every organization went through a long and arduous process of collaborating on this platform. When the Crown Heights Tenant Union agreed to ratify the demands you've all heard by now, almost every person in the room at our general membership meeting spoke or asked questions or shared insight. I can't stress enough how much these priorities resonated with your constituents. as both of you have coalition members in your district. This is a truly inclusive housing movement that represents the entire state and the needs of millions of New Yorkers, and I just want to acknowledge that I'm proud of the work we do together. Just have a couple of brief comments, a couple of things I want to talk about. First is in regards to the implementation and enforcement of the new rent laws. In the final days of last year's legislative session, Governor Cuomo was strangely absent from the conversation surrounding the new rent laws. It was an odd few days of silence coming from someone who spent the better part of a decade making sure landlords and developers got their money's worth in the legislative process. The truth finally dawned on me as I sat in a meeting with the commissioner of DHCR and her staff, along with dozens of tenants and advocates, to discuss implementation of the new law. It was actually really obvious. Governor Cuomo knew the momentum and resolve of the tenant movement was unstoppable. He also knew that the agency would be implementing and enforcing the new laws. They would never be able to do so adequately. Apologies to anyone listening who works for the agency, but the fact is, when it comes to tenants and the need for these laws to be enforced, DHCR was designed to fail. Though I must note that as an approval factory for landlords' MCI applications, DHCR's record is stellar. This does directly impact homelessness in New York City because there are people who are one MCI increase away from not being able to make their rent. Nonetheless, we will continue to call for $500 million in funding for DHCR. Of course, the tenant movement is more than ready to help reshape the culture of that agency from being an enabler of landlord shenanigans to being true protectors of working-class New Yorkers. We have offered to engage with them to increase organizing and education efforts, to streamline their complaint process, and in general help facilitate the difficult task of implementation. And I want to ask, in addition to this funding, that every legislator in Albany make a point of checking in with DHCR and embracing the crucial role of oversight that you each have over the agency, and encourage your colleagues to do the same. When a tenant shows up at your district office to find out why they've been waiting for 2 years on a rent overcharge complaint and it hasn't even been assigned to a rent examiner, please demand to know why the funding you fought for is not making the process any smoother for tenants. Fixing DHCR is not going to be easy, but I think it's the only true way to complete the job that you began in passing last year's landmark reforms. I wrote myself a note up here that says good cause eviction equals fewer homeless faces. It just dawned on me when the previous person was here that good cause eviction would be a significant deterrent to the crisis as it stands right now. In Crown Heights, we have a lot of people living in some of the situations that you were talking about, where they're maybe in the basement of a home, or they're living with a family, or they're living in a non-regulated unit, and those are the people that end up in housing court with no way for us to help them, nothing that we can do for them, and they end up in shelters. That's how it goes, and you can make a significant impact there. So I'd also like to recognize that it's likely that our friends from RSA and CHIP and other real estate lobbying groups are here today. And I just want to warn you, they're not happy about the work we did together last year, or that their money couldn't buy them a veto from the governor or the support of a handful of lukewarm Democrats, like in the good old days. They are frustrated that folks like my senator, Selner Myrie, and Assemblymember Diana Richardson don't want their money. These groups are going to paint a bleak picture of what they predict will happen to the rental market in New York if you don't roll back some of these changes, or if you ignore the overwhelming consensus statewide to support good cause eviction. I want you to remember when they sit in these seats that the same poor, burdened mom-and-pop landlords have hired some of the priciest law firms in the country and filed close to half a dozen lawsuits seeking to end rent regulation entirely. When they beg you to be reasonable, remember you are their plan B. Plan A is to go over your head so a Supreme Court full of loyalists to the original MCI fraud king can undo a century of tenant struggle. These landlords, mom and pop, corporate, and everything in between are already trying to burn down the building. I close with a message for them today. Dear landlords, the time to unite landlords and tenants under one roof was decades ago, before you systematically attacked our rights for the sake of your profit margins. It was well before you realized that even the loopholes weren't enough to satisfy your greed, so you broke the law as your business model. The time to unite before you decimated our communities. It was before you evicted our neighbors. It was before you harassed our elders and helped create the current homelessness crisis. Letting your buildings deteriorate now simply because you hate to lose is the equivalent of buying a video game, having your friends over to play, and then shutting the game off because the other kid starts winning. So no thank you, dear landlords.
I'm going to ask you to
That's all I
wrap.
have.
But
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. That was a very long and eloquent wrap-up
Oh, well, thank you.
sentence. But I appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to go now to Teresa Ramirez.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Teresa Ramírez y soy miembro de Se Hace Camino Nueva York. El día de hoy estoy aquí en apoyo al proyecto de ley S7628 que se trata de cupones para el acceso de vivienda. Mi familia, la cual en el momento se encuentra sin hogar, es uno de los muchos casos que se podrían beneficiar por esta propuesta y poder tener una vivienda estable.
Good morning. My name is Teresa Ramirez. I am a member of Make the Road New York. I am here today in support of Bill S7628, which is about housing access vouchers. My family, which is currently homeless, is one of the many cases that could benefit from this proposal, and this would enable us to have a stable home.
Mi hogar está en Bushwick, en donde he vivido por 11 años con mis 3 hijos de 16, 13 y 10 años de edad y mi esposo. Sufrimos mucho hostigamiento de parte del dueño del apartamento anterior para que nos saliéramos. Este hostigamiento fue de varias maneras, incluyendo la falta de gas en el apartamento. Él ignoró las reparaciones necesarias, lo que resultó hasta en un incendio. Nos tuvimos que salir porque el lugar ya no estaba habitable a raíz del incendio y llevamos ya 6 meses en un albergue porque el dueño se rehúsa a hacer las reparaciones para nosotros regresar. Aunque tenemos la esperanza de regresar a nuestro hogar, ya ha pasado mucho tiempo y hemos buscado apartamento porque queremos salir del albergue. Pero los precios están muy altos para nuestra familia y eso hay que considerar el pago que hay que hacer a los brokers.
My home is in Bushwick, where I have lived for almost 11 years with my husband and 3 children who are 16, 13, and 10 years old. In our previous apartment, we suffered a lot of harassment from the owner who wanted us to leave. This harassment included the lack of gas in the apartment, the disregard of necessary repairs that even resulted in a fire in the building. We had to leave because the place was no longer habitable in the wake of the fire, and we have been in a shelter for 6 months because the owner refuses to make repairs for us to return. Although we had hoped to return to our home, it has been a long time and we are looking for a new apartment because we want to leave the shelter system, but the prices are very high for our family's income, and we also have to consider that our family has to pay a broker fee.
Este programa podría ser la salvación para muchas familias, pues ayudaría a cubrir costos y se haría más fácil encontrar apartamento, salir del albergue y tener una vivienda estable. Según algunos estudios, los subsidios de alquiler son considerablemente menos costosos que el costo anual de $71,624 de los refugios de emergencia para cada familia en la ciudad de Nueva York.
The program could be the salvation for many families because it would help cover costs and it would make it easier for us to find another apartment, leave the shelter, and have a stable home. According to some studies, rent subsidies are considerably less expensive than the $71,624 annual cost of emergency shelters for each family in New York City.
Mi familia y yo queremos y merecemos un lugar digno donde vivir y este programa nos ayudaría a salir del sistema en el que nos encontramos ahora y volver a formar nuestro hogar. Por favor, pasemos esta ley y que los cupones para acceso de vivienda se hagan una realidad para todos los que lo necesitamos.
My family and I want and deserve a decent place to live, and this program would help us get out of the system we are now and rebuild our home. Please, let's pass this law and make housing access vouchers a reality for all of us who need it. Thank you.
Thank you both for your testimony. Do you want to? My
I
colleague
agree
has a
with-
question.
I just wanted a statement. I agree with you that $71,000 is excessive. It is probably triple what someone in parts of my district makes. And so someone making that amount of money will never be able to. So that's why we really need to fund the voucher system, and I totally agree with you. And question for you, why do you think DHCR was designed to fail? Just tell me why.
I think that when you set up an agency that's going to enforce a system and then you purposely don't fund that agency and then you create something like the Tenant Protection Unit and put 2 or 3 people on the staff, or you have 25 rent examiners for the entire city of New York, you're setting up the system to fail. It's a system that's tenant initiated, so landlords don't have to proactively do any of these things. So it's I think it's amendable. I think it's something that we can fix, but I think it's going to require a lot of work. So yeah, that's I think that it's until it's fully funded, and we're asking for quite a bit of funding. But when we sat in the room with the commissioner and with her staff, it was clear that they were burdened with a lot of work. Like, there's just way too much work. They're falling behind already on the new law, on keeping up with the stuff that's happening now. Like, the overcharges are insane. I mean, the overcharge cases take forever. It's 3 years at this point. People don't have that long to wait. And the only other thing that you can do is go to housing court, and then you're risking eviction, which is what I did. And it ended up turning out okay for me, but it's only because I was able to get an attorney through the Crown Heights Tenant Union. So if I had been on my own, I wouldn't have been able to stay in that apartment, because there's no way it would have happened in time. So, and could I just actually address real quick you were speaking about homeowners before, and the issue with renters. I don't know what the answer is for that. I do know that there's a bill in the Assembly that is definitively not the right answer. It expedites non-payment proceedings for homeowners that basically would give 45 days from the date of filing a housing court case to eviction. And I see where the impulse for that would come from, but I don't think that we lift each other up by knocking the most vulnerable of our people down. So I don't think that's ever come over to the Senate, but that's definitely not the right way. Whatever the right way is, I'm not sure, but
I don't think it's the Senate version of it.
Right.
yeah, no.
So I'll just add a comment that we did in last year's budget add funding for 94 new staff to HCR. We have been actively working with several organizations that are going to testify today as well on the issue of ensuring that the work we did on the rent laws, and also on many changes to the eviction processes and many other aspects of the landlord-tenant relationship, are properly implemented. So, but we do appreciate your organization's continuing work on that, and your continuing advocacy. And we are also meeting with HCR and others to push them to do to get the people hired and do the work well. But I also will say that, from my perspective, we've had a much more willing partner on that in the recent years, and they have very, very substantially embraced the challenge of implementing the new laws, and it is quite a challenge. So, but thank you again for your testimony and for your organization's work, and to Ms. Ramirez and Make the Road, thank you also for being here today, for sharing your experience, and for all of the work that Make the Road and your friends and associates there do.
Thank you.
Kathy Bordenaro.
Next up, we have Kathy Bordenaro. Katie Bordenaro, sorry, forgive me.
Katie.
We know each other. It's my fault.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you to the New York State Senate Committee on Housing, Construction, and Community Development for holding these hearings and giving New Yorkers the opportunity to discuss homelessness and also the more general topic of affordable housing. Those of us who advocate to protect and extend the opportunity of affordable housing appreciate these hearings where we can share our thoughts, experiences, and observations with you. My name is Katie Bordenaro. I live in Lower Manhattan at West Village Houses, which was a Mitchell-Lama rental development, affordable, and then an Article 11 co-op for a combined 42 years. In a few weeks, we will become a market rate co-op, a status which was not our first choice, but a position which market forces drove us to over the years. Nonetheless, hundreds of our households, the households owned by the former Mitchell-Lama tenants, will remain affordable to those residents and their families for some more years to come, partly depending on their status as low-income seniors, disabled persons. We have a high HIV population, and veterans. We're in the village, after all. In the years of fighting to save West Village houses, as much as practicable, I became active in the affordable housing movement and still serve as an officer of tenants and neighbors, which is well represented today by fellow board members Ellen Davidson and Tom Waters. I've been involved in the formation of Mitchell-Lama United, a new organization combining three grassroots groups: Cooperators United for Mitchell-Lama, the Brooklyn Borough President's Mitchell-Lama Task Force, and the Mitchell-Lama Residents Coalition. Today, I'm speaking as the corresponding secretary of the Mitchell-Lama Residents Coalition, with a 40-year-plus mission of serving rental and cooperative Mitchell-Lama developments and residents statewide. We work for the preservation and future expansion of the Mitchell-Lama program, as well as all other affordable housing programs, and to identify, clarify, and solve common concerns of current and former Mitchell-Lama residents in conjunction with elected officials and government agencies at all levels. In protecting this valuable resource and its residents, we are working to assure the availability of decent, affordable housing and the prevention of homelessness among our own constituents, which is a real possibility, and creating opportunities for homes for new residents, some of whom might be homeless today and could be welcomed into our community. Thus, we see our participation today as furthering many causes. Annually, the MLRC develops a legislative platform, which we distribute on our website, and multiple times a year through our newsletter, with a circulation of 5,000 households and elected official offices. Both of you receive our newsletter. I hand addressed Senator Persaud's newsletter the other day because you had a new district office address, and so I know that it was sent out. And Senator Kavanaugh has been on our list for many years. To turn to the strengths of the Mitchell-Lama program and see why it is so important to preserve, I would like to quote from a report by Tom Waters, who testified earlier. This is a copy of his report for the Community Service Society, in which he described very succinctly the Mitchell-Lama program. It led to the creation of 66,000 subsidized rental apartments and 69,000 co-op apartments in New York City alone from 1955 to 1981, not to mention many other developments across the state. Continuing, Mr. Waters said, unfortunately, however, the program was vulnerable to market-driven conversion of Mitchell-Lama to market housing after 20 years. And today, half of the rentals, so that means over 30,000 affordable units, were lost in New York City, and 7% of the co-ops, that's another 7,000 affordable units in the city, have been lost to us as affordable housing. The Mitchell-Lama movement wants to stop the loss of any more units and wants to protect those residents whose apartments were removed from the program but who were not eligible because of the date of construction or occupancy, which was one of the issues at West Village houses. Mitchell-Lama developments like mine were often built in marginal places. We were built along the Greenwich Village waterfront. In 1969, this was an industrial area filled with parking lots, printing houses, and facing the unattractive elevated Miller Highway. With the addition of 42 buildings of our development on 6 blocks, the area saw a turnaround as formerly industrial and commercial buildings like the archives and the staff rating factory became luxury rentals and co-ops. When the neighborhood became safe for brunch, uber luxury buildings like the Meyer buildings were built at the end of Charles Lane, and the Schrager Concept building at 160 Leroy Street with $50 million penthouses came online, attracting the likes of Martha Stewart and Calvert Klein. The area had gone from marginal to safe for brunch to one of the most expensive zip codes in the city. All of this success was built on the hopes and dreams of the teachers, nurses, civil servants, and first responders who had moved into West Village houses. And I'd like to point out that Claude Danny Richards, New York City bomb squad member, NYPD, died on 9/11, and that I myself am a victim of 9/11. I'm a cancer victim from 9/11. Gay couples, young families, local small businessmen, union members, we all found affordable homes at West Village House in Mitchell-Lama and influenced our local communities positively. We want to stay where we have our roots and know we can afford our housing. We welcome new neighbors with similar low and moderate income salaries and hope that they can retire comfortably in a safe environment. This progression occurred in Mitchell-Lamas all over the city and made this New York Road program the most successful of middle-income housing program in the nation and provides housing at a very good level. It deserves legislative action to continue and prosper. And here are some of the most important bills that we're hoping for. Assembly Bill 9720A, which would make it harder for co-ops to privatize. Assembly Bill 9719A, which would make corrections in election voting procedures. Assembly Bill 9721A, which is a democracy and transparency bill for the boards. And for the rentals, we're always advocating that the Mitchell-Lamas become rent stabilized by fiat. One more paragraph.
I'm going to ask you to wrap
One
up
more
quick,
paragraph.
very
That's
quickly,
it?
please.
Okay. Year after year, the Mitchell-Lama community comes to the legislature asking for the protections to keep our homes affordable for the present and future. The residents have done their part, and now that we have a legislature that is committed to affordable housing, has shown its strength and resolve in the legislative session, the last legislative session, the Mitchell-Lama community is eager to work with the Senate and the Assembly and the Governor to enact the long overdue protections for this vital and highly successful resource, perhaps starting with getting Senate same as for the named Assembly bills which have been introduced. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm going to, just given that it's 11:30 and we're on the third of our 18 panels, I'm going to forego the opportunity to ask questions, but we do have your, I think we have your written testimony here. And
I'll make an appointment and we can talk
and we've had
more.
opportunities to speak with about these things in the past and will again. But
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank-
Did
you
you
wanna-
see the legislation that the governor signed last year for Mitchell-Lama?
Yes, but we want to go further.
Okay, but
Okay.
we are working on it.
Thank you.
see with what we did last year.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Abby Bieberman of New York Legal Assistance Group and Omolola Amoyosi of Mobilization for Justice and Genesis Miranda of Make the Road.
Genesis is in the middle.
Yeah, and I'm just going to note we are trying to do 5 minutes per organization at this point, just given so we're not here at midnight. And also we note to the extent you have written testimony, we do review these things. The staff reviews them. We get your points. So to the extent you can, if you want to read portions of your testimony or give us, the 5 minutes of greatest hits, that would be appreciated. And as I say, we do review all of the written remarks as well. So I don't know if we want to just go from left to right here, or Ms. Bieberman.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me? All right, Senators Kavanaugh and Prasad and other committee members, thank you for the time to speak today and for the opportunity to submit recommendations on these issues. I will try to keep it short. My name is Abby Bieberman. I'm a senior supervising attorney with the New York Legal Assistance Group working in our public benefits unit. NYLAG is a not-for-profit legal services organization serving low-income New Yorkers. We encounter New Yorkers directly impacted by the housing affordability crisis in our city in all areas of our practice. In my work in particular, where the high cost of living is coupled with a level of benefits insufficient to meet one's needs, we serve clients with the intertwined problems of food scarcity, housing instability, and homelessness. The key issues I want to bring to your attention and for which I will provide recommendations are eviction prevention, homeless shelter access and services, and broadening the public assistance eligibility rules. New York City in particular is faced with a shortage of affordable housing and a growing homeless population, as we've already heard, and we are grateful for the passage and implementation of the Housing Stability and Tenant Protections Act, which strengthened tenant protections and is helping to maintain affordable housing. Our clients now need access to rental assistance programs that will better serve them long term. Our homeless clients need assistance moving out of the shelter and into permanent housing, and our clients who have managed to secure permanent and affordable housing are often on the brink of financial crisis at any moment if they lose their jobs or experience family emergencies that necessitate seeking government assistance. They need access to services that will help keep them out of the cycle of poverty and on the road to long-term financial stability. So my recommendations are first that, first NILAG strongly supports the Home Stability Support Program, yes to HSS, and one critical component of enabling public assistance recipient families to find safe housing and avoid eviction is ability to cover the cost of rent. That could come from an increase in the public assistance shelter allowance or a program that will bridge the gap. A family of 3 in New York City with a child in the household will receive a maximum of $400 in shelter allowance. And without adequate housing or even the potential for adequate housing under the current shelter allowance and rental subsidy scheme, New York State grossly fails to meet its obligations under the state constitution and social services law. HSS would provide that much needed assistance to people exiting the shelter system and entering permanent housing, providing rental assistance to help them maintain their affordable apartments, and reducing the multitude of costs associated with homelessness. The Family Homelessness and Eviction Prevention Supplement, FEPS, and City FEPS are often the only options for public assistance families being threatened by eviction, and these programs have helped so many New York City families avoid eviction and maintain housing and exit the shelter system. However, these subsidies are issued on top of the shelter allowance, but they still fail to bring the total shelter grant anywhere near the current fair market rent in New York City. Further, rent caps that are too low and other eligibility rules tied to the current programs make it even more difficult for families to secure and maintain their apartments, and the household composition rules create complications in family living situations and public assistance budgeting that can lead to more benefits problems, loss of benefits, and loss of the subsidy entirely. NILAG also supports the Housing Access Voucher Program. Many of the current housing subsidies are tied to the receipt of public assistance or require an individual to have a PA case in single issuance status. So even if that person is not eligible for ongoing benefits, the local Department of Social Services will be administering that program, for example, City FEPS. City FEPS for people who are facing eviction in order to maintain an apartment, but the eligibility criteria for people in that situation is quite limited. And the program is administered by HRA, which we do applaud in making itself available to advocates on an as-needed basis to work creatively to assist our clients. But we are concerned that it is difficult to administer on a widespread basis, especially for people without advocates. What ends up happening is that more clients are back in housing court because of problems with the voucher. And the Housing Access Voucher Program would be a welcome supplement coupled with HSS to provide much needed rental assistance to low-income families who are not in receipt of or who seek to transition off of PA. I want to bring also to light some issues with shelter services, so clients who are trying to exit the shelter, because we also represent homeless clients, some who are trying to get into shelter and many who are trying to exit. We urge the state to recognize the vulnerability that comes with homelessness and the ways in which it can do more to support our homeless neighbors. However, simply providing case management to the people who want it is not enough. There must be infrastructure in place to ensure that case management is effective. NILAG's clients report that their Department of Homeless Services caseworkers are underinformed or misinformed about available benefits and programs, and that their caseworkers are so overloaded that they cannot be relied upon for any form of assistance. They don't attempt to help them. Some instances, the caseworkers antagonize them. Caseworkers do not or only minimally assist clients with housing vouchers. My time's up.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to wrap up, and we'll
the
follow up
issue
with
is
some
that
questions
we're
as well.
having and then the last, just very quickly, final recommendation is that the state eliminate or, in the alternative, raise the asset limit for public assistance recipients. This is a big one, so it's in you can read it, but this is, I don't want to not get that one in. So, it makes it very difficult for, the state law is complex. It's difficult to navigate for both caseworkers and for clients. There's frivolous fraud investigations, and all of that could be reduced greatly by an elimination of the asset test for public assistance. Thank
Great.
you.
Okay, Ms. Miranda.
Good morning. On behalf of Make the Road New York, we submit this testimony. Oh, yeah, either one. Sorry, thank you. Okay, thank you. We submit this testimony in support of Senate Bill 7628, which would establish housing access voucher program and provide critical subsidy to New York tenants who are already homeless or who are at imminent risk of displacement. Make the Road New York is a not-profit community-based membership organization with over 24,000 members dedicated to building the power of immigrant and working class communities and achieve dignity and justice through organizing. Through organizing, policy innovation, transformative education, and survival services. As most of you know, we operate in 5 community centers in Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, Long Island, and Westchester. Make the Road New York has a deep record of fighting for tenants to live in safe, affordable homes, as well as providing legal representation in housing court to prevent evictions. Our housing organizers have a long history of standing with tenants to educate them about their rights, connect them to our attorneys, and to work collectively to push critical housing program campaigns priorities. We have seen firsthand how the pressures of gentrification and rapidly rising housing costs are resulting in families unable to find suitable places to live, in families living in overcrowded units in order to collectively cover the rent, in tenants often fearful of asserting their rights and living in horrible conditions so that they don't call attention to a landlord who might otherwise decide not to renew their lease. Without additional options for families to move to suitable housing, we often see other problems those families might be experience exacerbated. At Make the Road, I am one of the housing attorneys, and we often see many examples which the housing voucher program would be able to help in. For example, Maria G., a Make the Road member who is currently facing eviction from her rent-stabilized apartment, would benefit greatly from this proposed program. After her partner had a workplace accident, the family of 4 fell behind in rent, leaving Maria and her family to depend solely on her part-time domestic work. Unfortunately, Maria G's income makes her ineligible to receive public assistance while simultaneously ineligible for an emergency grant one-shot deal to help pay the rental arrears because that income is just too low. Maria and her family are now asking the court for a second extension to allow for more time to help her pay the arrears, but the current option are almost non-existent. If Maria was a part of the Housing Access Voucher Program, the loss of income would not have such a devastating consequence. Miss Maria G would be able to pay 30% of the remaining income in rent, and they would not be on the brink of homelessness. In another case, our office zealously advocated for Make the Road New York member Florentina from being evicted from her affordable rent-stabilized Bushwick apartment. Struggling to make ends meet after shuttering her small business and unable to find steady employment because of her age, Florentina and her partner found themselves unable to pay their rent and were ineligible based on the immigration status for public assistance and any corresponding housing subsidies. Already dealing with a frivolous eviction proceeding, their landlord used their inability to pay their rent as a technical defense to evict Florentina and her partner. Unfortunately, Florentina and her partner were evicted from their home. However, if Florentina had access to the Housing Access Voucher Program, she would not have been evicted from her home based on a non-payment of rent. The Housing Access Voucher Program would have safeguarded Florentina from ending up homeless. This bill will not only provide New York's low-income families a true opportunity for economic stability, it will create a real savings for the state by reducing the costs associated with homelessness. Because I'm short on time, I'll wrap it up. We can do so much more to provide New York families the opportunity to thrive. For these reasons, we ask the Senate to adopt this critical, important bill that will create a desperately needed voucher program to support New York's family who are currently experiencing or on the brink of homelessness. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Omolola Omoyesi, and I am a staff attorney within the housing unit at Mobilization for Justice. Mobilization for Justice is a right to counsel provider. over the past 2 years, we've provided full representation to approximately 2,600 tenants facing eviction in Bronx Housing Court. 85% of whom that we've represented have successfully avoided eviction due to our representation. In light of the fact that approximately 84% of all housing court cases are non-payment cases, we envision an obligation requiring a landlord to attach to the pre-litigation notice, commonly known as a rent demand, a rent history. This rent history would be analogous to the rent ledgers that landlords have to provide during housing court proceedings anyway. Despite the well-meaning intent of the rent demand or the pre-litigation notice, these notices often fail to give tenants a meaningful opportunity to avoid litigation, which is actually their intent. This is because landlords can use an accounting system and apply current rent paid to rental arrears first, rather than the month in which payment is made. For example, if a tenant fails to pay rent in, let's say, November 2018, and again fails to pay rent in March 2019, today she could receive a rent demand saying that she did not pay rent for January and February 2020, although she paid rent for not only those 2 months, but every other month, excluding those 2 other months. This back accounting practice is problematic for several reasons. First, it's not always readily apparent to tenants that they're in housing court not for their failure to pay current rent, but their failure to pay rent a year or maybe even years ago. This ambiguous nature of these rent demands create a hostile environment because tenants feel as if they've been unjustly brought to court. But the greater issue is that a large portion of tenants who find themselves in housing court apply for rental arrears assistance from city agencies or charities. And these entities required very detailed rent histories. They want to know what month the rent arrears started and who failed to pay rent. Was it the tenant themselves? Or was it a agency supplementing the tenant's rent, such as HRA or LINK or Section 8? Rent demands as they currently exist simply don't provide these kinds of details. What's crucial about rent histories is the fact that they really give city agencies and judges and even tenants themselves an opportunity to assess the full nature of the rent claim. You can see if there's improper charges in there, such as legal fees charged as rent, which is improper and happens often. Housing court is meant to be speedy. So equipped with this rent history attached to this rent demand, a tenant could, for example, go to an agency providing rental arrears assistance and apply for emergency grants at the first available moment, therefore allowing them to be one step ahead in the process and naturally decreasing exposure to eviction and a risk to homelessness. And even in instances where tenants end up in court, this rent history attached to the rent demand would allow the court to easily see if there's any crucial errors in the numbers and dismiss a case if needed. This suggestion merely corrects a flaw in these pre-litigation notices or these rent demands and allows them to serve their intended purpose, which is allowing tenants to avoid litigation, of course, therefore decreasing an exposure to eviction and a risk of homelessness. Thank you.
We're just discussing amongst ourselves. Are you familiar with the, I assume you are from your practice, but changes to the law, laws governing evictions that we made as part of the HSTPA last year?
Yes, excellent. Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about, sort of how the process has changed as a result of that, and how your proposal about including rent history with rent demands relates to the the sort of timeframes that are laid out in the current law?
Yeah. So. And I'll speak for my colleagues too. It's really changed our practice. It's been extraordinary, the changes. For instance, now instead of having a 7-day notice before evictions, there is now up to 14 days. as far as the laws for bringing holdover proceedings. If a tenant has lived in their apartment for a year or more, they get 60 days. If they've lived there for 30 days, they get 90. So I think that it's really deterred or makes it harder to bring tenants to the point where they're at an eviction. However, I still find that, and not just me, I think most housing court attorneys who represent tenants, we still find that there are nevertheless loopholes. I find that with these rent demands, they can say almost anything because it's an allegation and bring a tenant to court. And then you don't know until the tenant is there and maybe they get an attorney. And if they do, then we can dig deeper. But I strongly feel that because there's so many errors in the numbers and tenants aren't aware of it, they arrive to housing court at a detriment when the point is to get the money paid in non-payment cases, and that can be done well before they find themselves in housing court. That's really supposed to be a last resort, and right now it's just so easy to bring a tenant to housing court based on almost anything. And just really quickly, I had a case where a landlord alleged that a tenant owed $50,000, and this was a tenant whose rent was fully supplemented, and after litigation, it showed that he had a credit, and we went all the way to trial on this.
Wow. That's remarkable. Well, thank you for working in with clients and to make sure those laws are given effect. And if I think we have the gist of your. I don't think, did we get written?
You didn't get the written. Okay.
Yeah, I
let
think
me-
each. I think we have
Miranda,
written. We have written testimony from NILAG, but not from either. But if we don't have to take it right, but we'd love if you have copies of written testimony, we'd like to take them for the record. And if you, I think I have the gist of your proposal, but if there, we might want to follow up with you about language to see how it would work in the statute.
I added a section in there that suggested the statute that would be amended.
In the language,
Yeah,
okay.
in the.
And you refrain from saying that out loud, which we appreciate, so that's good. Ms. Bierman, if you could just talk a little bit more. You were talking about the level of expertise or responsiveness of DHS staffers in trying to implement the existing rental supplement programs. Can you just talk a little bit more about are those issues you've had ongoing, you or organization have ongoing discussions with HRA or DHS about, and I guess we're wondering, is this something we can do to assist in making the case that that there may be a need for additional training or other remedies to that. But you can just talk a little bit more about the dynamic of that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we do have conversations with HRA regularly, so that I appreciate their willingness to sit down with us and take our suggestions. I think the issue, I guess with exiting the shelter, it seems to me that it's a resource issue within the agency, that there just simply aren't enough caseworkers. And so, and these supplements are constantly changing. So I think everyone getting up to speed on what a person is eligible for is hard. And then all they can do is say, here's your shopping letter, and send the client off. And that's the level of service that most of our clients are getting. So the most common complaint that we get from our clients is, I have this shopping letter, it's about to expire, and I can't find a place to live. I can't find a landlord who will take it, which is not DHS's fault, but there is a lot of source of income discrimination, and landlords aren't willing to take the CityFEPS voucher. But there's no extra level of case management that helps clients maybe connect them to landlords they know might take it. Obviously, filing a case, but that's a bigger, DHS caseworker's not going to do that, but setting client up with a little bit more than just giving them the voucher. I think that's the biggest complaint.
Okay, so I think, unless my colleague has other questions, I think we're going to close out this panel and just note that we have had conversations on various source of income discrimination was a big topic of conversation last year in some of our hearings as we moved toward enacting that as a statewide ban. And I think that some of us are having conversations in this year's budget process about how we might ensure that that and some of our other fair housing laws are implemented effectively. But again, we thank all of you for all of your work and your testimony today. And if you do have physical copies of testimony, we would appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, next up we have a panel from Vocal, New York. I'll let there are 5 panelists. If you could make your way up here, and we'll let you introduce yourselves.
Francie, because we got 2. Bring up another one.
Okay, we're still working to get testimony from our prior panel, but with apologies for the small size of our table here, we appreciate the robust presence of your organization to testify. So we're gonna actually I'll let you choose which order, but we have again we were trying to do 5 minutes per organization, recognizing that there are 5 of you.
Okay.
We may give a little bit of maybe we'll do 10 minutes for the group. But we are going to ask you to, summarize, get your main point across to us, and we'll see if we have questions. But we do appreciate it.
Okay. Let's see if we get this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Nathan Flowers Adeshegan. Everyone calls me Flowers, and I'm a member of Vocal New York. We've been at it as a grassroots organization for 20 years. Voices of community activists and leaders. I love to tell people it's at the March in Washington with Dr. Martin Luther King in '63, and we were fighting for jobs, justice, and fair housing. We're still fighting. In '63 we marched. In '64 we got fair housing. In '65 we got the Voting Rights Act, which still is not right. So we continue to fight, and I will fight until I die. We're part of Housing Justice for All. I want to thank you, the senators, Kavanaugh and Ms. Prasad, because until we had the historic vote on June 14th of last year, we were pretty much in an abyss in New York State, in New York City, when it came to rights for tenants. And you helped right many wrongs by passing 8 of those 9 bills we had up, and we commend you for that. However, my homeless story started, I'm still in a shelter for 5 years. It started February 28th, 2015, and here it's a year later, I get to say I'm moving today to an apartment.
Fantastic.
I got evicted from my apartment at 34 and a half years because I had a preferential rent of $475, which went to $1,319.16, which is a retired worker on Social Security I could never pay. And thanks to you all, no one will ever be evicted for that reason again. And we commend you. And I want to say I'm moving out of a shelter in Queens, which is like a horror story. We have salt, no pepper. We have tea, no tea for 9 weeks. You can have pancakes, or we have some butter. No, we have syrup, no butter. And every day it's like a carbohydrate. You can have cereal every day. There's English muffins, there's bagels, there's raisin bread, but where's the protein, where's the food? I personally had to have a blood transfusion in March of last year because of extreme anemia. I'm a vegetarian. I can't cook there, and my blood count was half of what it should have been. And the doctor goes, "You're going to the hospital." I'm saying, "No, I'm not. I'm going to Albany on Tuesday." And he goes, "No, you're going to the hospital, or you're going to fall down." And so I went and got the blood transfusion, but that was thousands of dollars. If I didn't have Medicare as a retired person, I don't know where I'd be. It's like also medical bills are our number one reason for bankruptcy and losing our homes, and that's what happened. But you have to remember, 40 to 60% of people living in shelters work full time. They're full-time workers and still cannot cover the costs and still cannot make it. So Acacia says they're giving us 3 meals a day, and more than half of it goes in the garbage because you're given dry white rice, boiled spinach, and a piece of chicken. Or with me, we brought nothing vegetarian today. You can have the rice and the spinach. I'm like, what am I going to put on it? And they're like, I don't know. We got salad once in 3 months. It's like really horrible, but they have you all convinced that they give us 3 meals a day, and they reduce our food stamps to $16 a month. That's not fair. Okay, so I want to say I became the poster person for homeless when I confronted the mayor at the gym. I'm the one who went up and said, what you going to do? And he said, run away. I'm going to run away from this. And he's still running. And we're like, we have to commend you all because we got a true blue Senate, we got city council, and we got measures now that say we're going to put permanent housing in place. You asked about the cost? It costs $2 billion plus a year just for beds in this shelter system. Is that not squandering our wealth? And the other figure I heard about what the new cost would be for the permanent housing is like $300 million. Big difference. Even if it's $500 million, you're spending $2 billion just on beds. And Councilman Levin said when they come back, we start with 1.3 billion, and when they come back, it ends up being $2+ billion, and we have to give the money because we promised the beds.
So
the last thing
you're-
I want to say is that here's my housing voucher. Have you ever seen one? I brought it for you so you can have it. And the thing that is most important that it says, City for HEPS is similar to the federal Section 8 program in that subject to the availability of funding, it provides assistance, including rental assistance of specified amounts to landlords and tenants who want to form a landlord-tenant relationship. Any contractual relationship will be solely between each tenant participating in the program and each landlord participating in the program. The voucher before this, the link said on the first page, disclaimer, this is not guaranteed by the city of payment. It's not guaranteed by the city of New York. So landlords look at this nigga, why would I rent to you? Nobody's guaranteeing this money. There's no, and so we're asking that the wording be changed, that we get the new voucher for statewide, because as you know, they have no protections out of the city. A landlord can come and say, you're moving in 3 days, or give me $500 more a month, and you're out. So we thank you, and
We appreciate it. Let's let your colleagues talk, but you want to?
Yes, my name is Malik Mills, and I'm a member of Vocal, and I must say Neighbors Together, because through them I got the information that I needed to search for a place. And I'm here to speak on the voucher, but I'm here to speak on the perception of the homeless. It is perceived, as someone has pointed out, that most of people are here because of their own devices, or in this position because of their own devices. And I must admit that I'm one who made bad choices in life, who led to this point. But I was paroled in 2015 to buy parole to a three-quarter house that's unregulated, and really I was trapped off in a trap house. Not that all three-quarter houses are that way, but I experienced violence. There were 3 overdoses while I was there. The rodents were rampant, and eventually that's what ran me out. Rats as big as squirrels. And so I got involved with Neighbors Together, and the information is powerful. And they gave me. I obtained a voucher, and I must have called 200, 300 listings, and going through discrimination, income discrimination, and all sorts during that period of time. And I visited over 30 places, and I come to find out that the voucher didn't meet the fair market rate. So this is why I applaud this voucher enhancement or strengthening, because it's a game changer. It gives the free market rate, and people are able to look to find some place to live. And I just like to say and thank you for your past support of what we've been doing to enhance to help the homeless. Because I like to say this. There was a man, Sherman Jackson. He was press secretary for Herman Badillo. He was Anthony Alvarado, the former school chancellor. Also off-track betting. And in 2018, he ended up in one of the most notorious shelters in New York City, 30th Street, right around the corner. You know, so this is not an issue for me, guys who have made their choices, and I live with it, and I'm coming back. But I had to leave this system because the voucher wasn't strong enough. I would have found a place. I was determined with all the numbers that I put in. But it was a losing cause, you know, so I had to give that up, and I had to leave that place. And once that one rat ran across my bed, it was a wrap. I had to get out of there. I'm 70 years old, and I'm on a fixed income, but I left there and paying not nearly, but exactly 97% of my fixed income to have a clean, safe place to live. I gotta have that. I had it all my life, and I had to have it. So that's where I'm at now, and thank you for listening.
We appreciate it.
Chair Prasad, Chair Kavanaugh, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Philip Malbranche. I'm a writer and volunteer policy advocate and community organizer for several nonprofit organizations, including Vocal. I also serve on the board of directors of Care for the Homeless, which provides medical care to this particular population. And I'm glad to see Chair Prasad again. She's familiar with our work. I come in support, asking you to support these voucher programs that we're talking about, HSS and supportive housing, 20,000 new units of supportive housing. However, I'm particularly interested in the moral issue, the moral side of this issue, because it seems to be often neglected. Nobody talks about this oftentimes, and it's time to do that. For too long, New York's political and business leaders have neglected the moral aspects of the decision-making on issues related to housing and homelessness. The wide social and economic inequalities that remain at a crisis level exist because of the bad political decisions and improper business practices, of which I'm a survivor. Judeo-Christian teachings inform us that the earth is the Lord's and all it contains. You will know that that's a familiar phrase from the book of Psalms. Consequently, the rush to accumulate the available housing stock to detriment of others contravenes moral law and is harmful to the state's security. Biblical history shows that God enjoins us to periodically counterbalance social disequilibrium. We cannot allow New York's leaders to forget that God loves and demands righteousness, justice, social equity, and the dignity of each human being. Equity does not mean communism, as some will argue. I've heard it already. Equity means being faithful to the Creator. Human rights violations, including those related to housing and homelessness, are violations against divine quality in each person. So, thanks for the opportunity. I hope that you will give serious consideration in support of these issues that concern us, because it is also a security issue. I have experienced, like others, several physical assaults just for being homeless, just for even looking like I'm a homeless person. And the lack of housing or housing instability invites this sort of violence against those of us who are vulnerable. According to the propaganda, people are afraid of those who are homeless and consider us to be threats to others. Usually it's the other way around. So stable housing is safe for us. It also allows us even to make appointments to get basic medical care. You probably know that studies show that homelessness decreases one's lifespan. This is a health issue. This is a security issue. Thanks for helping us act on this.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello? All right, there we go. My name is Clayton Rolak Carr, and I am a leader with Vocal New York's homeless unit. And I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak and listen in on this issue.
Thank you.
Despite me serving my country in the U.S. Navy, I have been homeless, living in the SRO system for over 2 years. Within those 2 years, I've dealt with income discrimination. I have 2 leases right here that I signed, and despite me signing these leases, the landlords did not let me move in because HASA would not pay the full rent because I received disability from Veteran Affairs. It's really difficult to talk about because since I've been in this situation, there have been people that have died around me. On December 17th, 2019, my neighbor in the SRO jumped from her 5th floor unit, and NYPD asked me to give her medical care. I gave her CPR, but she still died on her way to the hospital. 2 days ago, a woman in my SRO unit was drugged with fentanyl and heroin and beat to death by another resident. This is a big crisis because these people were looking for housing and instead they found death and murder. This experience has been deeply traumatic and has changed me for the rest of my life. Despite me being a combat veteran, it's still a war zone on these streets in this country, in New York City, on the homeless. People across the state of New York are in desperate need of supportive housing. The governor promised New York State 20,000 units of supportive housing in 2016, but only a fraction of the funds we need have been released. For every 5 approved supportive housing applications, only 1 vacancy exists. Meanwhile, the overdose crisis have taken the lives of over 20,000 New Yorkers. Many of those lives could have been saved if these people had supportive housing. Housing is mental health, and a lot of these people wouldn't even be doing drugs if they had a stable place to live. At the same time, prosecutors, police, and elected officials are doing whatever they can to roll back bail reform laws. We will never stop relying on incarceration without meeting the basic needs of the most marginalized New Yorkers, like housing. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, and grew up all across the city. And as we can see, there are skyscrapers being built, new buildings, but the homeless population still increases. We cannot continue on this path. We must fight for New York, where everyone has a home. New York State must make a plan to end homelessness, and it must start by investing in the needs of homeless people. We need our Senate and Assembly to fight for housing voucher access programs to help homeless New Yorkers and those at risk of becoming homeless. Funding rental assistance will help tens of thousands of people and will put us on a path of having hashtag New York Homes Guaranteed. I just would like to say that this is a real crisis. You know, when I was a veteran in the military, I traveled the world fighting crisis, only to survive that and come home to a crisis. So I just would pray that you guys pass these bills, because it's not only giving homes, it's saving lives and providing stable household for children to grow up in. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Gaynor.
Good afternoon. My name is David Gaynor. My friends call me Super Dave. I'm here. I'm thanking you for letting me speak today. I've been in the shelter for 12 years, and I'm here to tell you that homeless is not an issue. It's poverty. People come to New York and they see the bright lights and they ignore the people on the streets. It's not our fault. It's an epidemic. In order to address this epidemic, we need a homes guarantee in the state of New York. Living in a shelter is horrifying, like surviving in the jungle. People look at you, You planned this? No. A lot of the staff are incompetent, which prolongs things like voucher wait times. Shelters are dirty. People don't have access to services they need to keep themselves clean. As a result, disease is a constant concern. The food is horrible. It's the same food they give kids. But we are grown people. They have stoves, but no one is licensed to use them. All the food is brought in from outside and extremely poor quality. I don't know. I'm a chef. And if you have a specific diet like, I don't know, you're vegetarian or kosher, you're out of luck. People are frustrated and have so much testosterone levels are high, people get into fights, they get sent to jail. In many ways, it's like prison. We have a curfew. Even if you have a job, you still have a pass to get to work. It's hard to be policed like this. Right now, the housing market is broken in New York City. 2,480,000 units of home housings are empty. That's 8% of the overall housing stock. 25% of new luxury condos that are built since 2013 remain empty, and yet 1,000 more are in the process of being built. All of this adds up to a system where there are 4 empty apartments for every single New Yorker in a shelter. This criminal greed has gone on too long. And at the end of the day, the blame lies with a government that has not put any meaningful resources towards attacking this problem at its root. The blame lies with a legislation that has not effectively challenged him addressing that moral crisis. We don't need more luxury housing for people who don't even live here. We need housing that community people can afford. It's essential that the Housing Access Voucher Program would create 50,000 vouchers. It funded at $500 million in its first year. There are several unique ways about this bill that are important to highlight. First and foremost, this voucher would cover apartments at the market rent. Right now, the largest local voucher program, City FEP, does not cover the average market rent for a single neighborhood in New York City. Vouchers like this gives people in my situation false hope. Often landlord discriminates against folks who have vouchers, and one of the cheapest ways we can combat this problem is by raising their value to the market rate. Second is statewide program. Even through housing vouchers aren't perfect for our brothers and sisters upstate, things are even worse. Outside of New York City, almost no local municipals can afford to offer people housing vouchers. Since the start of the Trump administration begun, we have seen nothing but cuts to Section 8, meaning many have nowhere to turn. The Housing Vouchers Access Program and its counterpart, HSS, are essential to individuals and families across the state who will continue to suffer horrible indignities without them. Finally, this voucher is unique because it's primarily focused on providing people who are currently stuck in shelters with a pathway to a permanent home. The state has created a multi-billion-dollar shelter system, one of the largest in the country, but it has failed to provide people in shelters with any variable ways to get themselves into a safe and dignified home. HVAP will dedicate 60% of its vouchers toward people who are currently homeless, which is key to addressing this crisis. Folks in my situation are stuck there because we have nowhere else to turn. The housing market has left us behind, and the state has made no meaningful commitment to help us. The governor often says we cannot afford to address this crisis, but how can we afford not to? How can one of the richest states in the nation let even one person sleep on the street? This crisis has gone on long enough. The New Yorkers are sick and tired of leaders who do not have the courage to stand up to the greed of the real estate industry.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you
very
very,
much.
very much.
Thank you.
You're all welcome. We are hearing you. You know, you're in our offices in Albany, and we do hear you. So thank you all very, very much for your testimonies today.
Thank you. Next, we have a panel consisting of NYSAFA and the Supportive Housing Network of New York.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You too. You too.
I'm going to do strict 5. I'm going to do strict 5 at the...
Only one. Hey, how are you? Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to begin by thanking you for your patience, and also note that we've gone through 5 panels and have 13 left. So we are going to try to somewhat strictly enforce I'll drop the somewhat. We're going to strictly enforce the 5 minutes for your initial testimony, and then we'll ask any questions we have and try to move on so we're all out of here by dinner. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Senator Kavanaugh and Senator Prasad, for having this hearing today. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to testify, and just a huge shout out to the vocal panel. I think that was a very impassioned, informed set of remarks by all of them, and we greatly appreciate their pushing the issue, particularly for supportive housing, which I am talking about today. My name is Laura Michoud. I'm the Executive Director of the Supportive Housing Network of New York. We are a 200 nonprofit organizations that own and operate supportive housing. We're statewide. We have 52,000 units through the state and 32 in the city. And really, New York State stands as a beacon for what supportive housing can do for the answer to chronic homelessness. As you know, it is extremely low-income affordable housing with on-site support services to really help people leaving homelessness with mental health, substance abuse, chronic health conditions, for veterans, for young adults, and it is incredibly successful. It basically takes individuals and families and youth from very expensive emergency services, such as shelters and hospitals, prisons, and psychiatric centers, and reintegrates them back into the community. And therefore, it saves money. We continue to experience, as you know, the worst homelessness crisis in the state of New York, with 92,000 people currently homeless. And right now, the demand for supportive housing is 5 approved applications for every 1 vacancy. So that is untenable. So 5 years ago, the governor, along with the state legislature, enacted a 5-year affordable housing plan that included 6,000 units of supportive housing. And we received funding for the first phase of the governor's 20,000 unit commitment over 15 years, which was 6,000 units. As you have heard from me previously, we are currently entering year 5 of the Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative. And we have no funding in place for years 6 through 15. So many panels before me have mentioned it, but without that commitment for the remaining 14,000 units, the development pipeline is going to grind to a halt. And this is the type of halt we saw between the end of the New York 3 agreement and the beginning of ESHI. And so we do not want to experience that again. We are at a very fast clip right now. We have 163 projects, which include 5,400 units that have currently received conditional awards. We can absolutely reach our 6,000 target and surpass it. And we would like for the legislature to consider including in their one House bills language that gets us to the next 5 years so that we have commitment in writing and know statutorily that the investors and syndicators and service providers, that they will be out there buying sites and developing sites so that we can accomplish the remaining 14,000 units. Supportive housing is critical to the continuum of addressing homelessness in New York, and along with the prevention strategies such as the rental assistance programs that have been discussed today, it is a continuum that can help us answer the chronic homeless condition and also address people who are in low-income situations that need our assistance to remain housed. Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your concision as well, Mr. Ardell.
Hi, good afternoon, Senator Kavanaugh and Senator Prasad. Thank you very much for having this hearing today and for the opportunity to testify on a critically important issue of homelessness and affordable housing. My name is Chris Widello. I'm the Director of External Affairs for NISAFA. We are the trade association in New York for the affordable housing industry. We have over 375 members, and they are for nonprofit developers, building managers and owners, architects, and those active in the financing, construction, and building of affordable housing and its operation across the state. And our members, our NISAFA members, are responsible for building most of the affordable housing in New York State with federal, state, and local subsidies and incentives. I want to thank the Senate, first off, for including the leadership of two of these committees for its past and current commitment to the affordable housing. In one way, the $2.5 billion 5-year housing plan, we're headed into the final year of that, and it's a really historic commitment for supportive housing to last until last year's monumental rent reforms, which are already having a great impact on reducing eviction rates. And we are encouraged that all facets of government have recognized the need to take steps to address this housing crisis and make the difference in the lives of thousands of people across the state. And we are all keenly aware that more needs to be done, particularly in the area of homelessness and the rate of homelessness, and not only here in New York City, but across the state. There are a number of reasons why, ways that we can reduce homelessness, and one of them is around the supply of affordable housing. The solution to homelessness is very simple: a home, a place for people to live, and all of us must work together to support the creation of more rental opportunities that people can call a home. This means a new 5-year housing plan with funding levels that truly match the need we see statewide, and committing to a 5-year planning process for housing so that our developers and investors know that public support will be there for years to come. It means taking a close look at our zoning to find out where we can increase density in land scarce areas, but also transit-rich areas across New York City. In other areas of the state, we need to think through what tools do we need to create and make sure municipalities are doing their fair share and not keeping anyone locked outside their borders. NIMBYism is a force in all areas of New York, and to truly tackle this problem will require telling some communities, yes, in your backyard too. Of course, supply isn't the only solution to this crisis. We also need the tools available that will help people move from a shelter to permanent housing and to keep people from facing homelessness when they are precariously housed. We are encouraged by early data showing significant decreases in eviction rates after the passage of rent reform laws and right to counsel policies in New York City. We are hopeful that these trends will continue, and we encourage all stakeholders to continue to look for opportunities to help those who are at risk of eviction due to the loss of income or unexpected expenses. To that end, we are encouraged by legislative proposals like the Housing Access Voucher Program and the Home Stability Support Voucher, which seek to expand opportunities available for low-income individuals and families to find safe and secure housing and to keep it. As a trade association representing developers and owners of affordable housing, we want to stress the importance not only of availability of these critical vouchers, which make many of our members' projects possible, but also their ease of use. Particularly in New York City, we have too often seen homeless referrals and placement of tenants with vouchers to be subject to a bureaucratic delays and processing problems. This leads to and tenant-ready units being vacant, sometimes for months at needless cost. More troubling, though, it leads to individuals and families languishing in shelters. We ask that we all look into ways to streamline these processes across the various agencies toward a goal of making this process far smoother. When there is an available unit and an eligible family, bureaucracy should not be complicating the expeditious placement of that family into a home. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today, and I welcome any questions or comments you may have.
Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, thank you both for your testimony and for all your work. Can we just to put in perspective, we've had the opportunity to discuss this a little bit before, but this idea that there's a commitment to providing supportive housing, and then there's a sort of gap in that in that commitment, and then at some point the state gets around to funding it again. This is something this is a phenomenon we've seen before, right? Can you just talk about like the how an advanced commitment by the legislature or the governor to ensuring that there are funds going to be available in out years matters in terms of ensuring production on an ongoing basis?
Sure. So it's exactly as you're articulating it, that if developers or nonprofits are going to go out and buy a site, it could be 18 months to 24 months to actually get through, for instance, zoning. If you're doing something around ULURP or zoning, even in an upstate community, to get you to actually get your finances together, your zoning together, and to close on that property. So for nonprofits to take the risk to buy a site right now, when we're coming into year 5, they would have to really think whether they would be able to then come to the state to get financing. And so it basically puts a chill on the market. And in addition, the Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative was a new initiative. It's statewide, which is terrific. It didn't have the brand of New York, New York, so it took people a while to kind of get comfortable to move forward with it. And now we are comfortable. We're moving at a fast clip. We're getting the units done. So kind of the last thing we want to do, because it will be concerning to the developers and also the investors, is have a break and not be able to continuously develop. So we just want to go forward. We see a very cliff ahead, and we want to avoid that and keep moving. So that's why we're asking for another 5-year commitment.
No, I'm good.
Okay, good. And again, greatly appreciate your being here and your testimony, and we're going to move on just in the interest of getting through
Thank
the
you
day.
so much.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Good seeing you.
Next up, we have safety net activists at the Urban Justice Center.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, I think on this panel, we're also going to have Laura Case, if she's here. Okay, great.
I'm sorry, I don't have no.
Sure. Thank you for having this hearing today. My name is Laura Case. I am a board member of Community Voices Heard and a formerly homeless person from Westchester. I am here today to talk about why we desperately need a New York Homes Guarantee. Westchester has a reputation for being one of the wealthiest counties in our state. We certainly have the things people imagine: isolated, leafy suburbs with single-family homes. We also have rapidly gentrifying urban downtowns, large and vibrant low-income and working communities, and one of our state's highest percentages of homeless people outside of the city. In 2012, I was in a New Rochelle drop-in shelter, so overcrowded that they ran out of room for cots every night. We were forced to sleep sitting up in hard plastic chairs. In Peekskill, Mount Vernon, and Tarrytown, 1 in 10 students don't have a place to call their own. Here is who is homeless in Westchester. I met a home health aide who spent half of her week working overnight at clients' homes. The rest of the night, she was sleeping on an army cot with us because she couldn't afford a home of her own. A friend of mine was 80 years old, had a prosthetic leg, and was sleeping in a shelter that kicked him out into the cold at 7 a.m. every day. I have known people with cancer, an insurance claims adjuster, a preschool bus driver, and a young man on the lower end of the autism spectrum. I have seen the toll homelessness takes. I have seen people become hopeless enough to attempt suicide or just to give up on getting housing. Should any of these people be homeless? No, and neither should anyone else. Here's what it means to be homeless in Westchester. I stayed at shelters where we had no shower access for months at a time. Right now, the drop-in shelters for men in Yonkers have no showers on site. Being homeless means you lose your right to choose. It means you are treated, as we heard from other folks, like a child or an inmate. Imagine being told when you can go to sleep, when to eat, shower, who you share a room with, how many belongings you can own. In Westchester, being homeless means being stuck. Rents have skyrocketed over the past decade. Retirees and people on Social Security disability can't afford them. Neither can working folks. According to HUD, the fair market rent for a one-bedroom in our county has gone up 12% in just the past year alone. Existing low-income housing programs are shutting their doors. The White Plains YMCA rented rooms to 140 people. A few months ago, they sold their building to developers who plan to raise it. The site where many people got keys for the first time, where they felt safe, is going to become luxury apartments and a pool. The state's 2020 budget must include full funding for the Housing Access Voucher Program. $500 million could create 50,000 vouchers. Imagine 50,000 less individuals and families forced to sleep in shelters, cars, and subways. The fact that the voucher would cover 100%, up to 100% of fair market rent, and that it won't expire makes it unique and powerful. As an individual, my ideal version of the program, while it would continue to have a big percentage of vouchers set aside for extremely low-income people, the percentage open to people who are above 100% of the federal poverty level would be increased. People who are working lower wage jobs and receiving SSDI, because as we heard today, they are trapped as well. We also need the state to pass the rest of the Homes Guarantee Platform, including home stability support, funding all 20,000 units of supportive housing that the governor promised to create over 3 years ago, and passing just cause eviction. Just cause eviction will stop people from ever having to experience what we did by keeping them in their homes in the first place. In the coming years, we must fully fund social housing. The construction of new buildings with truly affordable rents owned by nonprofits, governments, and the people ourselves. The cost of doing these things sounds high. It is not so high when you consider the revenue that could be raised just by raising taxes on the top 1%. Some of these folks live mere miles away from the deepest areas of poverty in my county, yet they pay less in taxes than their neighbors. The cost is reasonable when you consider that Westchester residential and family shelters charge the county and our taxpayers $3,000 or $4,000 per person or family every single month, even though an apartment is so much less. And the cost is downright inexpensive when you consider the human cost of leaving so many of our neighbors throughout the state to suffer instead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Wilson?
My name is Sarah Wilson. I'm here with the Safety Net activists. I would like to say I have a full testimony prepared, but got an outline of one and we're just gonna wing it, okay? So for identification purposes, I am disabled. I live with mental health issues, and I am in recovery from active addiction as well. I'm dual diagnosed.
Just for the record, can you say your full name so that we have?
Sarah Wilson.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So please bear with my anxiety. A little closer. Okay. All right. So what I thought was I'd speak a little bit on my personal experience. Right now, I am in supportive housing. I am formerly homeless. I spent a little over 2 years in shelter. So I'm in scattered site right now. And it was bittersweet because I would like to say that I was matched, but I was mismatched. When I came in 740 days prior, I was coming in with a family situation in Coney Island. Shelter felt the need to place me so far in northern Bronx that I'm 11 minutes from Yonkers. So over 2 years later, I still could not go back in and tell a judge that I have an apartment my son can go back and forth to after school, which was my sole purpose for coming in. Because when you're disabled, you're on a fixed income, and I needed a fixed rent. And to be compliant, I couldn't couch hop, so I had to come in with all the documents in my hand that I needed to get out. But because of the way the system is run, and I'll break down some of those as they so eloquently have been broken down throughout this room today, people aren't coming in and then getting out. They're coming in and getting sicker after they come in. Their depressions are getting worse. Their addictions are getting worse because the environment is not conducive to growth. It's not conducive to recovery. It's not conducive to anything that would allow oneself to get better. And the whole idea of people are coming in to take advantage of a system, I'm not trying to take advantage. I'm very clearly stating I would like to better my life. I would like to be at a better standing. I'm not trying to take advantage whatsoever. I just want to know the outs. So in 4 different permanent shelters, 1 intake, so 5 shelters included, I could not get anybody to do my supportive housing packet for me. So nobody tells you how to get your own housing. I went and I found out about SEPs through advocacy places like this, and I went and I caught walking pneumonia standing in the ring to get that voucher, to then come back and be told by my shelter that they couldn't do anything to house me. I was actually told to walk my feet bloody, which I did, from every different thing to looking for agencies, rental places that would take vouchers. They don't do that, or they say they don't do that. I then started looking up apartments that fell into the price range, going to the apartment and only telling you I had a voucher when you said time for payment, because if the apartment exists, it exists. They had excuses for that too. I was told we want working tenants. My disability, I do not work right now, but I am in services, which I need to continue for myself. So one of the other things, aside from my family situation, which is in Brooklyn, my mental health services are in Lower Manhattan. My advocacy work, which I do with Vocal, as well as Safety Net, is anywhere from Brooklyn to Manhattan. So I was begging for like a 2-borough zone, just somewhere between Brooklyn and Manhattan, and I'll figure the rest. I gave doctors letters. That was my anxiety. Bottom line, for it to be case specific, this new voucher seems like the first sight of something that might actually work. If I want to grow my family size from single, which is something that happens when you get your life better, I'm fearful I have to go back into a shelter because I'm told I'm only in a single person housing. Like, what if single woman wants to be married woman or child? And these things happen when our lives get better. So the vouchers need to be able to transition from single persons into families. I know I'm everywhere. I get very emotional when I speak at these things. But the most I have to lose right now is embarrassment. And to be honest with you, I've been humiliated for things like asking for toilet paper and being told no. I wanted to attend 12-step meetings, but that would put me back later than my curfew, because if I'm locking in 8 hours at night for an active building, I want to attend a 12-step meeting first, and I want to take a commitment. But curfew-wise, I can't make it back to shelter in time, and signing for that bed takes priority over, things of that nature. I had so much more to say, and I'm so all over the place, and I want to respect the time.
If you want to, because your time is
Right.
up, if you want to just give us take your time and just send us back a written testimony if you wish to do that, please feel free to do so.
I would say you've also covered a lot of
Right. I just
material
wanna
here
make
that's
sure I
been
didn't leave
very
out
important for us
anything,
to hear, so we appreciate it.
crucial that I want to just, okay, and just I'll leave it at this. Okay, my education is in early childhood education, special education, and psychology. I'm one class away from a double bachelor's with an endorsement. So as well as having personal knowledge of psych, I also have a background. When you come into these buildings, I don't have anything against police. My grandfather's a cop. But when there's only cops and no counselors, you're telling me what your plans for my future are. Because if something happens, the only solution you have is to incarcerate people. But if there were people along the way that they could see, they wouldn't need to be arrested. It would be a preventative thing. So, yeah, I could, like I said, I'll definitely submit something in writing because I have a lot to go on too. But this, I'll leave it at this. Okay, so the nature that goes on in the buildings, which the psych aspect bothers me so much, is that they have, they don't want people to get too comfortable. So they'll specifically go out of their way to create an uncomfortable environment for you. They'll mix you up in different rooms, whatever it is, to make sure that you don't get comfortable because they think that you want to stay or they think you want to come back. I do not want to come back, which is why I want to be placed in a housing situation that will not allow me to reintegrate back into the system, but to be actually placed one time correctly. And that's about it. Okay, thank y'all.
And again, thank you both for your testimony.
Thank
We
you
really appreciate it.
Good job. I'm a mess.
Great. Next up, we have Nicole McVinua, hope I'm saying that properly, from Urban Pathways.
Hello. Good afternoon. Nice to see you. I'm Nicole McVinua. I'm the Director of Policy at Urban Pathways. Thanks for the opportunity to testify. Urban Pathways is a nonprofit organization that provides services to homeless and at-risk single adults throughout New York City. We have a unique full continuum of care at our organization, and we use a housing first model. So our street outreach teams, drop-in center, and safe havens serve specifically chronically homeless New Yorkers, which we know is a big challenge, and try to support them in that first step to just coming inside. And then we also have extended stay residences and permanent supportive housing for people who have a history of homelessness and a mental health diagnosis. Altogether, we serve about 3,700 individuals a year. And, we try to meet folks where they're at. We provide a range of services appropriate to their needs and their personal goals, and then we assist them in gaining permanent housing. As we've heard here today, assisting folks in gaining permanent housing is really challenging. We are proud members of the Supportive Housing Network of New York, and we absolutely want to see the next round of ESHI funded, and we think that that's a great solution. But we know that there are also needs to have those tools to access the private market, and so we are here today supporting the Home Stability Support Act, as well as the Housing Access Voucher program bill introduced by U. Senator Kavanaugh. And, I won't reiterate all the facts, but we know that the vacancy rate for units at affordable rates is very, very low. Apartments renting at $800 per month have a vacancy rate of a little over 1%. Apartments ranging from $800 to $999 per month have a vacancy rate of only about 2%. And so that's a big challenge, like was mentioned earlier, that a lot of folks are sort of competing for the same apartments. And the majority of our clients, their primary form of income is SSI or SSDI. We have a number of clients who are working, but they're making minimum wage. And so they come into our program and they're ready to move on, and they've done a lot of hard work, and they just can't. And it's very frustrating for our clients, and it's very frustrating for our staff who are trying to assist our clients. And it sort of impacts the whole system. The Safe Haven model is really a system for chronically homeless individuals. It's an alternative to your typical shelter. There are far fewer rules, and there's a lot more services. There's smaller environments. And so you sort of have this like cog in the system where we have folks on the street, our outreach team are building relationships with them, and they say, hey, I'm ready today. I want to come inside to a safe haven bed. I'm willing to take you up on that. And we don't have a bed for them because all of our beds are full, because we have folks who are staying far beyond the 3 to 6 months that the safe haven model was intended for, simply because of that financial struggle. So we think that having a statewide voucher program is really critical. It would be a great tool to access the private market. And I just want to point to a few things that we think would make that type of program successful. One is having vouchers that are accessible at or above the fair market rent, which we see in both of these bills. That's really important to make it competitive, as well as for folks not to get kind of knocked off that benefit cliff. If they get a job, they get a promotion. You often hear of people who turn down a promotion because they're fearful of losing their benefits. So, and I think that that's included in both of the bills as well. So we're really happy to see that people can transition off and maybe get a lesser benefit, but not get knocked off entirely if they find success in their careers. We also want to see folks addressed who tend to kind of fall through the cracks, like undocumented folks. We have a number of undocumented immigrants living in our safe haven programs, and we cannot transition them because there is nothing for them. And we also want to recognize that a lot of people struggle with poverty who are not necessarily at income levels low enough to receive public assistance. So we're happy to see with the Housing Voucher Access Program the 250% of FPL, because we think that it's really important to make sure that those folks are getting services that they need so they don't fall deeper into poverty. The other thing that has been mentioned is having landlord education. It's really important for landlords to understand these vouchers. And just one last thing, I know I'm out of time, but I think that something else you might want to consider is making these vouchers accessible to people who are in extended stay residences or supportive housing who want to move forward, like Sarah was saying in her testimony just a moment ago that she would like to transition on from her supportive housing to have her son to grow her family, and we think that that's really important. Especially we have several extended stay OMH licensed supportive housing buildings, and these are level 2 housing. They're intended for people who need higher levels of care, and they're intended to then move forward after 3 to 5 years once they feel ready. We never kick anyone out, but a lot of people are very ready to move on, and they've done a lot of hard work. They've built their skill sets, and they really need. They really want to move on to their own independent housing in the private market. So that's something that we think you might want to consider making a few vouchers accessible to that population as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I just want to zero in on one point you're making, as I understand it, which is I asked this of a few people before. There are some people that will tell us that homelessness is. There's people, they need a lot of services. It's not really about the housing. It's about other things. So you're a provider that's doing the very difficult work of getting people from living in public spaces to a setting where they can get services, where they can get stabilized and move on. So you're saying that even if we acknowledge there may be people who are not ready for a permanent housing in a sort of just an apartment in the private market on day one, that programs like this will assist you in getting people from living in public spaces and other people who have high needs by freeing up space, by allowing people to move on from those temporary settings into more permanent settings, and then freeing up those resources for additional New Yorkers that may need them. Is that? That's correct. Yeah. Safe havens are a transitional program. Sometimes someone coming in right from the street may be ready to go into their own apartment. But we really focus on the chronically homeless individuals. We bring people inside who have been homeless for 3, 5, 10 more years, and they need
some intensive services. They need an opportunity to transition. Our programs are a bit more flexible than a shelter bed. So if you don't come back for a couple of days, we're not going to kick you out. Your bed will still be there, which doesn't always happen in the shelters. And so sometimes we see that with folks who have been on the street for a long time. They kind of come in and out. And so we provide that space for them to come in and out to do what they need to do to feel ready. And then we help them prepare for that next step. But exactly what you're saying, because those we have people sort of languishing in those programs, it's not freeing up the space for the people who really need it. So if we can move those people on and they can have an effective voucher program, we can serve even more people each year and get those people inside and ready.
Great. Thank you. And we'll follow up with you about your suggestion about extended stay and supportive housing units as well. Do you have it?
No, I just wrote the note.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Habitat for Humanity. Did you bring one for my coat?
Which one's which?
Matthew?
Yep, it's me. Yep.
And Elvon.
It's me.
Okay, so we're gonna try very hard to do 5 minutes for the organization. So if you could split your time in 5 minutes, and we'll ask some questions.
Okay. I'm legally blind, so please just wave at me vigorously when I've hit 2.5. My name is Matt Dunbar. I'm the Vice President of External Affairs for Habitat for Humanity New York City. I'm coming here today. We are involved in a project that will be serving homeless New Yorkers. It's called the Haven Green Project. It's 123 units of deeply affordable senior LGBT-friendly housing on the Lower East Side, and that will be receiving ESHI funding, so we definitely want to highlight that and say we are expanding what we do in order to serve more vulnerable populations. With that said, Habitat for Humanity is predominantly known as an affordable home ownership organization, and so we're here. I'm here today to talk about the Affordable Housing Corporation program, which funds up to $40,000 per unit, but is statutory, and that increase hasn't seen an increase in many years, and the program has been funded at around $25 to $26 million since it was founded in 1985. So we're here to talk about increasing that program funding to be on par with rental housing, and to increase the per unit allocation to $75,000 per unit, because in New York City we have over 150 units, many in historically redlined communities. Are all pipeline projects that need additional funding, and often take years to get that funding through discretionary allocations from local council members and borough presidents. And many of those are in central Brooklyn, the Bronx, southeast Queens, and so we really would love the state to come alongside and help support, in addition to the Sony Mae mortgage funding that all of our homeowners rely on. And we know that additional funding requires additional affordability, so we're also supportive of the funding for a community land trust to be taxed appropriately and to support that model historically. And I want to thank Chair Kavanaugh for the committee passing the Affordable Housing Corporation bill out of committee earlier this week, and we are so supportive and thankful for that, and we hope that the Senate will support that funding and increased budget line item in the budget.
Thank you.
Senators, thank you. Am I on here?
Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Vaughn Kuhn. I'm with Habitat for Humanity of Suffolk County. And yes, indeed, we are primarily a homeownership-focused program. However, we provide housing with a lot of community investment and a lot of volunteer service that supplements government dollars. And occasionally, we are able to actually assist people who were formerly homeless to become home buyers. And I think it's important not to forget that home ownership can be an approach to help in rebuilding communities, especially distressed communities. We usually take foreclosed properties, or especially tax foreclosed properties, and together with the community and our home buyers, we build homes. And the state of New York has been a big supporter. As my colleague mentioned, using the Sunny Mae Mortgage Program and the Affordable Housing Corporation Program, that's been a key financial support to many of our home buyers. And we do encourage an increase in Affordable Housing Corporation funding to make the program more effective. I'd just like to take a minute to talk about one of our recent home buyers. I'm going to start by just reading something that she wrote to us before she entered our program. When she first came to Habitat, she wrote, "Lack of security, stress, and fear are feelings I have constantly battled. Growing up was a struggle. I have dealt with many hardships, including homelessness, always scared that one day I might become homeless again. My mother, my brother, and I are currently living in a very cramped 1.5-bedroom apartment. While we try our best to make our living situation as comfortable as possible, we have been fighting a losing battle and a lack of space and lack of landlord maintenance. I learned about Habitat for Humanity, first volunteering for a build on North 15th Street in Wyandanch. The feeling during that build brought a sense of peace of mind. I realized that homeownership was something that I wanted. Growing up in Wyandanch, we never had a place that really felt like home, achieving stability. I remember studying for college exams on the floor of a 1 or 2 room apartment that we were renting from a family member. Today, Darielle just purchased a home in Wheatley Heights that she built with Habitat last fall. Our prayers for a better life have finally been answered. I would like to thank each and every person that assisted in any way. We are so grateful. I'd like to extend that thanks also to you, Senators, for supporting the programs that provide the housing. Like we said before, the Affordable Housing Corporation program, and also key is that tax exemption for the community land trusts. And in addition, I'd like to encourage, for years, the New York State Community Development Financial Institution Fund has been languoring. It needs money. And I would encourage you to put $25 million to support the New York State CDFI fund. Thank you.
Great. I think, do you want to? I think we've had a couple opportunities to discuss these, and I appreciate your testimony, but I think I'll refrain from asking questions here just to keep things moving. Do you?
I just wanted, one of your colleagues had reached out to us saying, we need to invest more in affordable home ownership. And, that's just what you're saying. And so we promise that we will look into that.
Thank you. If I might also add, the affordable homeownership that Habitat provides in the city often serves residents that live in rent-regulated and housing and in public housing. And our last project actually rehabbed and rebuilt 23 single-family homes, and 20% of the home buyers of our Habitat homes were coming from NYCHA developments. And so it's important, within the larger housing context to make sure that we have a continuum so people can move and then create vacancy opportunities for folks that are in dire needs for those units to be able to move in. So we thank you for your support, and we look forward to working with you.
One part of my district, so.
Yeah. Great.
And we appreciate, again, we appreciate your work, and we have, as you know, have moved at least one of these bills forward in the last meeting of the Housing Committee, but we obviously will continue to focus on this as the budget process unfolds. But again, thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have somebody from Churches United for Fair Housing, Maxwell Cabello.
Cabello.
Thank you.
My name is Maxwell Cabello, and I work at Churches United for Fair Housing, a nonprofit based in North Brooklyn. That actually originated from a fair housing fight with the city over city-sponsored segregated housing in a case that we eventually won. And since then, we've been working around housing-related issues, specifically looking at housing as a racial justice issue. So that's kind of our perspective and background. So over the years, we've evolved to providing direct services to thousands of low-income New Yorkers, many of whom actually live in both of your districts. And of the people that we serve, roughly 80% of them are in households that earn less than $35,000 a year. About half of them under $25,000 a year. And so we're typically working with them to find stable housing, which is very difficult, as so many people here have outlined. And recently, this past fall, we released a report on racialized displacement after a couple of city rezonings in the early 2000s. And one of the interesting things we found in that report was that places where we saw the lowest rates of displacement were in areas with high numbers of public housing, Mitchell-Lama housing, and HDFCs, among other like low-income permanently affordable housing units. So we feel like we know the path forward and how to provide stable housing, and obviously feel that home stability support and housing access vouchers will help further that stability. But I think really the issue here is we have this question of moral and economic. I think we're all on the same page in terms of the moral argument, and many others laid that out much better than I can. But the last 6 months, our organization has been looking at the economic discussion around the viability of funding truly affordable and permanently affordable housing. And so two pieces we want to, and really the high theme we want to outline is the fact that a lot of money is being spent and invested in the state and in the city in programs that aren't working for our communities. Two I want to touch on today, and it's available in more detail in my written testimony, is the first is 421A, which costs the city about $1.5 billion a year in abating property taxes for developers that are primarily developing market rate condos. That's about half the units generated by 421A. And of the affordable units that are made available in that program, the vast majority are income targeted for families earning over $100,000 a year, which, as I mentioned, is 3 to 4 times higher than the incomes of people that we're serving in both of your districts. The other pieces, we've been looking at Opportunity Zones, which is a federal program, but that the governor opted in to provide the same benefits at the state and therefore city level. That's going to cost the state and city about $1 billion over the next 10 years, and much more after that, after the full benefits are realized. And there's a variety of other programs that can either be repealed or enacted. We are part of Housing Justice for All, so we support the platforms around enacting the billionaire's tax, stock transfer tax, pied-à-terre tax, and a lot of the other policies outlined by other groups here today. So really, I guess what I want to say overall is that we know that there's a path forward. We know the programs that are working for our communities. We know the ones that aren't, and we really encourage you to shift our priority and our monies away from programs that aren't working and invest in programs like home stability support, housing access vouchers, public housing, fully funding NYCHA, and other low-income housing, social housing, and supportive housing, and particularly prioritizing these type of moves over the fear of inconveniencing billionaires and other people that have historically had economic and political power in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you just, given from your perspective in the communities you're working in, can you just talk about how, if at all, this problem, the problem particularly of homeless people, has evolved over time? Has it gotten worse? Has it changed in any way that you think we should be mindful
Yeah,
of?
so I think some people will touch on this. We work in communities where there aren't a lot of stabilized or rent-regulated housing units. So once people leave those, it's not really accessible to people in our community anymore. And when we look on things like Housing Connect, again, the income levels aren't there matching, and so people get into really unstable circumstances. People have talked about overcrowding and doubling up. I think that's what we see more and more. And we're also working this year with the pilot program with HPD to go into shelters and provide direct services there. We have had people that are homeless that we've worked with. But there's also been a gap, even in an organization like ours that provides direct services with shelters. So we know that exists, and we're trying to address it as well. But we've seen that in our community more and more as people get pushed out of units that were historically affordable. Them not being regulated has become more and more of a push. Like the people we're serving are growing astronomically, particularly in Brownsville, is one of the places where we've seen the number of people we work with double over the last year because we're seeing those needs come up more and more.
That's why I said Brownsville.
Yeah.
So to the extent we're doing programs that are intended to prevent homelessness, we should be ensuring that they're available to people who are severely overcrowded, doubled up, and living in sort of precarious situations, as well as people in the shelters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a full spectrum. I think we're not as deeply involved in the homelessness issues, but we're probably more involved with people that are borderline homeless because they're looking for stable housing. And I think also where affordable housing is actually being cited, we have people that are having to move hours away from the communities that they've lived their whole lives in and that they're participants in. So where housing available is also an issue as well. But yes, I think we see people that are becoming destabilized more and more as their options are running out in their communities.
Where do you have data on how do you count doubling up? Do you have any data on that?
No, I mean, I don't on me. I know
not on
we,
you.
we do intake and people describe their housing situation. So it's usually people that have moved in with other family members that are trying to find a situation where they
Or
can.
just people who do couch hopping and.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Okay. Well, again, thank you for your testimony and for all of your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. Come on down.
Good afternoon. Apologize for jumping in, but I'm going to rush out of here to get back to a 1:30 appointment.
That's
So
fine.
really appreciate the time and the opportunity to testify and for the Senate support of all things housing in general. The Center promotes and protects affordable homeownership in New York so that middle and working class families can live in strong, thriving communities. We focus on everything from co-ops to condos to one to four family homes. But I wanted to just pick up on something that Matt mentioned about the continuum and how we see one to four family homes fitting into a lot of the solutions. So when the center started a foreclosure prevention loan program in 2010 in partnership with the city, our first homeowner was at risk of foreclosure because the Advantage program had ended and their tenant had been unable to continue to pay the rent. So we know that the problems with voucher programs like that really do impact landlords that want to be part of the housing solution. We know that one to four family owner occupants historically charge less rent to their tenants, their low-income tenants. Yep. They take better care of their properties than investors do. We have a lot of information in here on investor purchases and what that's doing to our communities. But we really think that focusing on, really well-intentioned owner-occupant owners who want to be part of community solutions is really important. So obviously, we support the SHE initiative, and we really do see a connection between supporting senior homeowners as well as providing additional resources for senior services. And I know there's a proposal to increase case management in senior centers. One thing we wanted to call out, senior housing, is that the senior homeowner population increased 29% between 2008 and 2017, just in New York City. That's an increase of 73,000. So our seniors are aging in place. They really need a lot of support. The primary way that we serve these at-risk seniors is through the Homeowner Protection Program. So the senators have heard me say this a lot, and we really appreciate your support. We're advocating for the $20 million for HOP in the One House bills, and happy to provide any information that you need for that.
We are trying to push that.
Thank you so much. We're very grateful. There are a couple other recommendations that we highlight in here. I'm happy to discuss any of them and all of them, and I'm very sensitive of your time. But we do think it's important to draw attention to the connection between ownership and asset building and the impact that's had on African American and Latinx communities in particular. There's some good data in there. But not only do we want to make sure that we're preserving housing through the homeowner protection and preserving ownership, but we want to make sure that new families have a chance to buy. Yeah, exactly. So we've highlighted some recommendations for strengthening pre-purchase opportunities for new families, really trying to level the playing field for families to own and not investors, looking at how we can support community land trusts, and looking at some legislative initiatives such as the flip tax as a way to, again, level the playing field. So apologies for speaking really fast. Just wanted to give you guys a summary and let me know if you have any questions.
We actually appreciate really fast talking, and I think we got it all down and recorded as well as in person here today. And just, I'll just thank you for all of your advocacy on these issues, and we've had lots of opportunities to speak with us, and we will continue to focus on home ownership, but I think it's affordable
Yes, of
home
course,
ownership,
yeah.
but it's also very good to have you here to speak particularly about how these relate to some
Yeah.
of the homelessness issues we're talking about today. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for also for centering so many voices of those directly impacted. It's really meaningful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and I would note that we've been, although Roxanne Prasad and I have a great deal of energy and enthusiasm, we've been here for several hours, so we're particularly happy to be joined by Senator Robert Jackson, who is known particularly for his energy and enthusiasm for the advocacy work we do. And so welcome to this hearing, Senator Jackson. Next up, we have J.T. Falcone of United Neighborhood Houses.
Hello.
Without further ado, hi.
Great. So thank you, Chairs Kavanaugh and Prasad and Senator Jackson for the opportunity to testify. My name is JT Falcone. I'm here on behalf of United Neighborhood Houses, UNH. UNH is a policy and social change organization representing 43 neighborhood settlement houses across New York State. It's been around for 100 years. I'm going to skip over that part and let you read it. So the first thing that's up on our short list of things that we wanted to raise to your attention is home stability support, and I believe all three of you are co-sponsors on that legislation, so thank you for your work on that, and we're really hoping to see that in the budget this year. The next up, I know Senator Prasad, you are a co-sponsor on the New York State Small Home Anti-Speculation Act, and for a lot of the reasons outlined by our friends at Center for NYC Neighborhoods, who were just up here before me, UNH is supportive of the Small Home Anti-Speculation Act. Wanted to raise it at the hearing today because small homeowners do tend to offer the most affordable apartments for community members, and those protections are vital. Would love to see additional co-sponsors on that legislation, and would also be really interested in seeing if that could be a part of the budget talks in a deficit year. This is a revenue raiser. Ultimately, the primary purpose of the legislation is, of course, to deter activity, but there is a positive financial impact for the state. So just wanted to put it high on the radar. And thank you, Senator Prasad, for your co-sponsorship on that legislation. The other primary piece that I wanted to bring up here, can't talk about housing and homelessness in New York City and home insecurity without talking about NYCHA. I just wanted to raise that we are currently in a situation where even if NYCHA's best projections for the NYCHA 2.0 plan manifest, we still have an $8 billion gap, and there are more than 400,000 New Yorkers who are suffering through horrendous conditions. I know that I am preaching to the choir here, so I'm not going to lament much further, but again, this is something that if there were to be a budget passed that did not include funding for NYCHA, that would be a great opportunity missed, and we are dealing with a situation that grows exponentially worse every year. So absolutely wanted to raise that. And then the last piece, I am currently working through the Housing Access Voucher Program, and really excited to see the momentum. Interested in having conversations and working together on the legislation. 100-year organization, we move slow sometimes, so we're not at the memo of support stage yet, but really excited about that, and it really does address one of the areas that HSS is not addressing, which is those folks that are not receiving those rental assistance from the federal government. So appreciate all of the work that you're doing, appreciate your partnership, really interested in speaking further on the housing voucher program, and really interested in continuing working with the three of you as the partners that you've been.
Great, thank you. Do you want to? I have one, but I want to defer to. So you represent, as you note, you're a coalition of several 100-year organizations, and some I think not quite a century, but
we
many
call it the settlement house movement. It's always growing.
Right. Many really organizations that are deeply embedded in our communities, providing full range of services to all kinds of New Yorkers. Can you just talk about a little bit how homelessness affects your ability to do work in education and social services and to serve the elderly and all the other work that you're doing, that your organizations are doing?
100%. Across the city, our members are seeing their communities disintegrate in front of their eyes. Settlement houses came into being in the late 1800s and have watched New York transform over that time, in many instances for the better, have helped to usher progressive reforms forward that have helped New York change for the better. And my portfolio, Neighborhood Affordability, which focuses on these housing issues, economic development, workforce development, it came to being 3 years ago when our members sat around our table and said, if New York continues on the trajectory that it is today, there will not be communities left that we represent. It was an existential threat to the diversity that makes this city great. And so UNH has dove in on some of these housing issues that for the last couple of decades we were less active in, and really ramped up our work on public housing because we see communities that even with community centers that are funded and providing early childhood education and providing senior services centers, congregate meals, home delivered meals, at the end of the day, if an individual or a family does not have a home to go home to, none of these supports can help them get on the track to an improved life because that instability makes it virtually impossible to get ahead. We have, in recent years, as we've expanded the settlement house movement, actually brought in several CDCs, LDCs, and supportive housing providers as well, who have been working with our more traditional settlement houses that are more straight and narrow social services to help expand the way that we think about our network's ability to be involved in these issues and to work on these issues, because if things continue the way that they are, New York City is not going to be a home that people is not going to offer homes that people can afford and decent wages for them to continue living.
Thank you. All right, so again, just in the interest of time, I will wrap up there, at least my comments and questions. But again, thank you, and on behalf of all the organizations that you work with, part of the coalition, we really appreciate your being here today and all the work and advocacy you do. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you to the committees for centering the voices of those most affected. So that was
And
really
just
good.
to let you know, after this, I'm having a meeting discussing NYCHA again, so.
Thank you.
I actually just want to go back to before you said it would be a missed opportunity not to put money in the budget. I appreciate the diplomacy of that phrase, but I will say for the record that would be an understatement, and we're certainly working on it.
Oh. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can say it, I can't.
Okay. Next up, we have the Kingston Tenants Union and Mount Vernon United Tenants.
Rashida Tyler, Dennis Ortiz.
The real Kingston.
Okay, they appear not to be in the room at the moment, so if anybody's listening at home wants to notify them that they've been called, we'd appreciate it. And then we will move on to a panel that includes Casa and Goals, Pablo Estupian, I believe it is, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's a typo on my sheet. And George Soderoff and Anita Long and Lynn Timko.
That's all right.
And Anita's not here. I think Lynn is coming up right now.
Hi.
How you doing? Good.
Hello, George. And, okay, so Anita's not here? Okay, Anita's not here.
Good afternoon, Senator and Senator.
Welcome.
My name is George Satiroff. I'm a member of CASA, Community Action for Safe Apartments, and I live at 901 Walton Avenue in the Bronx. I just want to start really quick to say that I hear this term market rates. It always annoys me. Market rates is a term that applies to Yankee baseball tickets, fine wines, and pork bellies. These are commodities, right? That's what market rates apply to. It is imperative that major capital improvement laws in the state of New York be repealed immediately, if not sooner. Why? Some of the reasons are obvious, other reasons are more obvious. Safe, affordable housing is not a commodity, no matter how much the real estate industry wishes it were so. Safe, affordable housing is a human right. Safe, affordable housing is not a commodity. We have, in the city, some dwelling units that still have a modicum of protection under the rent stabilization program. The real estate industry continues, however, to work stubbornly and relentlessly to wrest these few units from the protection of this program. The most effective tool in the arsenal of the real estate industry for the capturing and plundering of these units is the MCI. A careful perusal of MCI implementation shows that MCIs lead inevitably to substantial increased rents, which lead to greater financial hardship, which leads to displacement, which leads to even greater poverty. The building in which I reside, 901 Walton Avenue in the Bronx, was acquired back in 2014 by Finkelstein Timberger, a company owning more than 70 multiple dwelling units in the Bronx. Within 6 weeks of purchasing the building, Finkelstein embarked on a wholesale gutting of kitchens and bathrooms, carefully neglecting to inform tenants that it was his intention to raise their rents as much as possible. While other building-wide improvements, such as plumbing, were made, I specifically refer to the kitchen and bathroom replacements. Why? Because I learned in retrospect that the state agency DHCR had at that time a grand total of 7 inspectors to respond statewide to requests concerning possible violations. It then became obvious that Finkelstein was passing off individual apartment improvements as MCIs, knowing full well that DHCR, being overwhelmed, would most likely rubber stamp approval of his applications. From this experience, I could see that DHCR needs a huge infusion of funds and personnel to be able to discharge properly its mandate. Back to my predatory landlord. At the point it became obvious that Finkelstein was making a money grab, tenants organized and with the help of CASA enjoyed the modest success of having the rent increases reduced from $59 per room to $42 per room. Since then, Finkelstein has applied for 2 more MCIs. As a pensioner, I must be very careful in the managing of my finances. Like many tenants, I feel victimized by being forced to pay for a product which I neither needed nor requested. Many of us feel strong-armed. We, the tenants, are still organizing and struggling to engage the young, the immigrants, and the undocumented to participate in the fight to preserve our homes. I myself am limited in the contribution that I can make because I am not fluent in the language of the majority in my building, Spanish. Studies show that MCIs are being used almost exclusively by large predatory landlords. Small landlords do not avail themselves of this loophole. Preserving the MCI program under the pretext of assisting the small landlord is an action detrimental to the majority of renters. Again, we absolutely must repeal all MCI legislation immediately. On the 5th of February this year, Pablo Estupiñán, Deputy Director at CASA, submitted to the Joint Legislative Hearing on Housing regarding DHCR a detailed and persuasive testimony. Time does not allow me to repeat his testimony here, but I strongly urge all committee members to familiarize themselves with Mr. Estupiñán's testimony. The one recommendation I will stress is an additional $500 million in funding so that DHCR can implement and enforce the new rent laws. Laws mean nothing if they cannot be enforced. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
So Lynn.
Good afternoon. Thank you, senators, for hosting this hearing. My name is Pablo Estupiñán. I'm the Deputy Director at CASA. And CASA is a community organization that's member-led in the Southwest Bronx. We only organize in a few neighborhoods. All the buildings that we work with, we can walk to within 15 to 20 minutes. And we have over 3,000 members that participate in the range of our meetings, from campaign meetings to our monthly membership meetings to organizing in their buildings. I think it's important to note that CASA really exists so that people that are living in bad conditions in their neighborhood are facing harassment from landlords, don't get gas, don't get heat and hot water, all organized so that they know their rights, which DHCR fails to notify them about. The information isn't accessible. It's they don't have fact sheets that are always explain the law clearly. And so really CASA, it's really our role to go out in the community, door knock, make sure that people know their rights. Because I can tell you that there are thousands of families we're working with right now that are not living in good conditions and are being, denied the right to safe and dignified housing. And I would say in relation to that, to what George's point earlier, a study, I wanted to take some time, because you all have my written testimony. I guess I should also clarify that CASA is also a member of the Housing Justice for All Coalition, and we strongly support the entire platform. We know that all of it is crucial and matters, and that they're all interconnected. If you pull one lever, it also affects other people. So we're here in support of home stability support, in support of the Housing Assistance Voucher Program, fully funding DHCR with an additional $500 million to do enforcement and implement the new rent laws. And we're also here because there's a couple pieces of legislation that are critical to a lot of organizations in the coalition, which include the elimination of MCIs and good cause eviction. In our neighborhood, 73% of the housing is rent stabilized. And we have a couple NYCHA projects. Good cause eviction would help many of our members. I can think of one who's facing daily harassment from her landlord, in many forms of that word harassment. And she chooses to stay in her home because she knows that if she leaves, she won't be able to find something within the same rent. And as she's a single older mother, making it through. And I want to say around MCIs, I think there's a lot of work we need to do around dismantling the narratives that landlords use, and that many, in the legislature might also believe. And I want you all to know we're going to be releasing a report on Tuesday when we go up to Albany around major capital improvements. Because although it's, I think the thing is to think about when landlords say that they need major capital improvements to maintain their buildings, that's not true. None of the buildings that we have organized with MCIs are in habitable conditions. They all have open violations. So in George's case, even after we've organized his buildings, him and his neighbors still suffer from lack of services. And you see the contrast between bathroom and kitchens and living rooms with collapsed ceilings and cracks. So we know it's not about maintenance. We know that MCIs are about money. And the other thing about major capital improvements is I remember at the Senate hearing in May where they paid, allegedly they paid contractors to show up to counter protest and say, we need jobs. Right. The reality is that the real estate industry in their own reports that you can see on their website from 2003 to 2014, the real estate industry, less than 1% of the money that they spent went towards MCIs and IAIs. So when they say that we provide jobs to the community, that's not true. We also know that George's landlord Finkelstein paid about $7 million to the super to do the work, which DHCR knows about in paperwork. So we see that there's a pattern where it's not actually the job. MCI jobs are temporary, and we see landlords either exploit supers or exploit other non-unionized workers, which really includes, as you all know, it could be a lot of people of color working to. And then I see you.
So I think the clock isn't running because we're doing 5 minutes per organization. So, but we wanted to hear your testimony. So I appreciate it. But if you could grab so we can move on till then, we appreciate
I'll
it.
wrap it up.
And we'll get back to comments and questions as well.
Okay. And the last thing I would just say is landlords don't really use MCIs anyways. On a yearly basis, they apply for 1,000 MC applications to DHCR. So we know that less than 1% of landlords are doing them. And so when we hear them say that we really need them, we're not actually seeing them use them. And it's really like big corporate landlords.
Great. Ms. Timko.
Hi, Lynn Timko, and I'm goals advised. And our building's been through the whole MCI thing ready to do their more, but they came up with a new game plan, more lucrative, which we're rent stabilized building, which is the Frankenstein thing, where they're demolishing 30 apartments, trying to combine them into 15. Also talking about combining 5 into one huge mega $20,000 a month loft. And this is a rent-stabilized building. They managed, and it's Tri-Arch Management, voted the 5th worst in New York. And they managed to, in 1 year's time, to vacate half of the building. And at 89 apartments, there's 45 empty. They had a J51 that expired, so that kind of, they were scared some of those tenants out that probably didn't have to go. And now what they're doing is seems to be following formula, like the no heat, hot water thing, that was fixed. Now there's no gas for maybe 6 months, we don't know, we got hot plates. And then there's asbestos removal, they did that. They hired liaisons so they didn't have to talk to us directly to communicate with the construction people. The building is not that kind of building. It's not very solid, so our fears of them taking out walls and everything is like a foot will come in through the ceiling kind of thing. And so that seems to be the new formula. So I guess after the gas comes the construction delays and lack of services, made like electric and water and stuff. That hasn't happened yet, but that seems to be, they're going down the checklist. And what's up with the gas thing? Everybody I've talked to has had this issue, where they turned it off for the building for like 6 months, and then we were told it was a routine Con Ed inspection, but then Con Ed says they don't make routine inspections. So that's it. They're well on their plan to make money.
Okay, so just again briefly, and we have a few more witnesses that have been waiting patiently, but just to first of all thank both of your organizations have really been on the forefront of both advocacy and kind of direct service and advice to our constituents, obviously especially in my neck of the woods goals, but obviously had a lot of opportunities to work with CASA as well.
I wanted to ask you, we had talked before about the Frankenstein thing, and you said that was on the table. Are there any updates on that?
I was getting there.
Oh, okay.
I asked the
Sorry.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just kidding. Sorry. That was a good. You should come up here and I'll sit down there. No, just for those who may be watching who may not be familiar with this, the Frankenstein concept is the idea that you take 2 or more rent-stabilized apartment and you turn them into one apartment, and under current regulations, their landlords have been had some ability to reset the rent at so you have a $1,000 apartment and another $1,000 apartment. If you combine them, logic might suggest that it should be a $2,000 apartment, but under some regs that have been in effect, landlords can set an initial rent for the new apartment without regard to the fact that it had been created from 2 $1,000 apartments. So we have had conversations with HCR, which is putting out a lot of regulations, partly because we changed the laws a lot last year. This is not an area where we changed the law, but we have been seeking clarification from them. And I've been saying we, but I'll say personally, it is my belief that HCR has the ability to clarify their own regulations without they don't need legislative authority to address that. And if they were to make it clear that you don't get a clean slate to set the rent, that would presumably eliminate the incentive landlords currently have to do these, so in some cases building wide, as you note, in other cases might just be pairs of apartments next to each other. But we are in ongoing conversations with HCR about that and hoping that they will address that through regulation.
I hope you get to us in time, because they've applied for the permits and they're waiting.
All right. And then, as I know that we're having further conversations on Tuesday about MCIs. We did address in last year's legislation some of the issues, particularly making it clear that doing every bathroom and every kitchen in a building does not count as an MCI going forward, and also made it clear that you can't have serious violations and get an MCI application approved. So, and again, a lot of this, and both of your organizations have also been involved in this question of how HCR is implementing the law, and I know you've met with us and with HCR about that. So we'll be continuing to look to them to make sure that they're addressing it in the most assertive way that the law permits. But again, and I recognizing we'll have ongoing conversations about whether further legislative changes are needed. But I'll end there and thank you both of your organizations and all of you. And does anybody else want to? Senator Jackson.
Well, good afternoon. Well, let me thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
And I thank you for continuing to organize in your neighborhood. And I say that as someone that has been involved in organizing, one, as a labor union, and then number two, as a tenant. I'm a tenant myself where we had to organize, went on a rent strike and da-da-da-da-da. And when landlords falsify their IAIs or MCIs, then we have to ask attorneys to then, or the courts, to say that they've committed fraud. And when you commit fraud, then in my opinion, there needs to be a penalty for that, besides just a small fine. You're committing fraud on an application saying that you spent X amount of dollars, and really you didn't spend X amount of dollars, and so action needs to be taken against the landlord. And as to the woman that you referred to, Pablo, that appears to be harassment, and the city council passed legislation against tenant harassment. And so I think you need to look at that legislation and then communicate in writing to the landlord, you are harassing this tenant. If you don't stop, a lawsuit is going to be filed against you. And so those are the type of assertive actions that organizers have to take in order to back down landlords to try to take advantage of everything they can. And then you ask for the MCIs to be eliminated totally, okay? So, but what happens, and I'm being realistic, what happens when a roof has to be replaced? And right under the current laws, if they have to replace a roof because it's exceeded its age overall, you would argue that the landlord should be able to take it out of their current funds and do it without an MCI? I'm just trying to understand the logic.
Well, I'm sorry. The question we've always had as tenants, and we don't get to see the landlord's books.
You can ask.
We can ask.
You can ask.
They don't open them? Okay. Okay. Here's we have asked? Okay, we've asked, and we don't get to see them. We don't want the landlord to go out of business. We know he's got to make a profit. What we're looking at is not to be gouged. What we're looking at is not to lose our homes. That's what we're looking for. Now, what we're saying when we ask that the MCIs be eliminated is that this is a law that was instituted way back by the landlords themselves, and it is only being used by predatory landlords. It's not being used by the little guy. And the predatory landlords, Finkelstein owns more than 70 buildings. Now, if a roof collapses in one of his buildings, I'm sorry, but he's got the money to fix that roof. You see? I mean, you can't tell me that a man who owns 70 buildings doesn't have any money. I don't have any money. Do I make some sense?
You clearly make sense.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
I'm just speaking as a layman, little guy.
So now you're talking about in his buildings, but basically you're saying get rid of MCIs. That you're talking about legislation. That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just talking
Yes.
now.
And if I could just add, kind of what the report will show is that the majority of landlords don't use MCIs on a yearly basis.
On a yearly basis?
Yeah,
I would
there's
hope
about
not.
There's 1,000 applications a year, so it's really less than 1% of landlords. And in the report, we did some research with JustFix around portfolio size. The average landlord that does MCIs has 3 times the size of the normal landlord in New York. So they own about 27 buildings on average, and that's what all
The
our
average
organizations.
landlord that does an MCI.
Owns 27 buildings. So, and that's really, like George said, that's where our organizations from Brooklyn to the Bronx to Queens to Manhattan, that's where we organize around corporate predatory landlords. And I would say that a lot of our members would probably use the analogy if you own a car, you're responsible to pay for the brakes, or if something breaks down, right? That's your own investment. Although we know cars depreciate. And the other thing I would add around that is landlords, when they do MCIs, they're increasing the value of their building. So we see MCIs in connection to rezonings. So when we go to our buildings around 161, our neighborhood has been rezoned a couple times. We often ask the question to people in the buildings like, why do you think they're putting in new bathroom and kitchens? Why are they fixing the elevator and roofs after you living 20 years without the service? Who do you think they want to make the building nice for? And I kind of lost my train of thought, but I was going to say that. And then the other thing I want to say around reshifting the narrative is, as George says, it's tenants that pay the entire MCI cost back. So we are talking about taxing billionaires, and in that vein, landlords that have a lot of money shouldn't be extracting the little wealth that tenants have and putting it into their pockets. I think that's fundamentally why people are so angry about MCIs, right? You pay for the landlord's investment. It's really a form of corporate welfare for landlords, right?
Well,
and our members are already rent burdened, so even a $20 increase per month puts them at odds with healthcare, with the quality of life their children have, clothes, after-school programs, et cetera.
And mainly your organization, the residents, the 3,000 tenants, is that mainly the South Bronx area?
Southwest, so around Mount Eden, High Bridge, between 161st to 175th is where we organize.
'Cause I know that many years ago when our landlord did an MCI with the Ruth and other stuff, and we, the Tenants Association, went and purchased the entire file and went through everything, and some of the conditions that they supposedly repaired or changed, we were still having some problems. We took pictures, affidavits, and DHCR basically ruled against us, and we had to hire an attorney. And after 5 or 6 years of litigation, we finally won. They had to reduce my rent. My rent for my apartment went up $150 a month increase. $150. They had to reduce it and pay me back over $6,000. This is me and all the other tenants that were involved as a result of that. So in an organizing, you got to make sure that whatever they submit to DHCR to justify anything, you have to get it and scrutinize it yourselves. And if necessary, use contractors to determine whether or not, one, they use the materials they say they did. Number two, is that individual a relative of one of the partners, and so forth and so on, in order to show that this is a pattern of trying to increase so that people will not be able to afford to live there. And finally, I say to you, you're up at the Housing Justice Rally, right? You remember that, right? Housing justice for all. Housing is a human right. I agree with you. But one thing that no one talked about, and you may have said that I mentioned about it, we must ensure that every child receives a good education. Because when they grow up, then they will be able to, more than likely, research has shown, and I said this, Mr. Chair, why I wasn't here earlier, I was over at City Hall at a class size matters hearing on education. The more education you receive, more than likely, not all the time, you will earn more money to be able to afford affordable housing, okay, and better health, and so forth and so on. So education is very, very important in that whole process, even though it's not immediate like that, but it's part of the long-term solution for all of us. And so I thank you for your advocacy on behalf of all of the residents that you represent, and understanding that now in the state Senate, and you had in the state Assembly, in the state Senate, you have Democrats there that are going to work to protect you and what your rights are as tenants in New York City. And thanks, Brian Kavanaugh, for your leadership, and my colleague for your leadership as the chair of the Social Services Committee. But you should know you got people up there that understand your needs and issues, and we're going to work hard to make sure that we obtain the goals and objectives so that all of us can stay in our homes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, and thank you all for your leadership, and we're looking forward to New York Homes Guarantee.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
So before Senator Kavanaugh calls our next panel, I just want everyone to know that we have staff here representing Senators Montgomery, Biaggi. I have staff here also, Senator Gennardez, Senator Benjamin, Senator Sepulveda, Senator Hoylman, and Senator Saunders. So whether the senators are here, they do have staff here. Thank you.
And it is, just to note also, it's a busy time of year where most of us are in Albany most days because the budget process goes on up there. So many of our colleagues are, working on their one day this week to be in their districts. But we certainly will be having an ongoing conversation with all our colleagues about the testimony and the issues that are being presented here. Next up, we have Rhonda Jackson.
My namesake.
Yes. So we're trying to watch the time. Don't encourage him.
Don't encourage.
We're gonna cut off Senator Jackson's mic if he keeps. Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you.
Use the mic, please.
Yes, my name is Rhonda Jackson, and I am a proud member.
Ms. Jackson?
Yeah, if I could ask you to move the mic in front of you so that we can hear you and folks at home can hear you as well.
How's that? That's better?
That's great.
So my name is Rhonda Jackson, and I'm a proud member of the Coalition for the Homeless Client Advisory Group, and I'm also a fellow with the Family Homelessness Coalition. So I want to thank you, Senator Kavanaugh, Senator Prasad, and now Senator Jackson, and all the other elected officials and supporters who have invested time and energies for keeping this conversation going and looking for viable solutions to this outrageous homelessness crisis. I was homeless for much of my adult life. I work with the Transit Authority, so after 9/11, I struggled with mental illness and I totally left New York. I did return in 2017, and at that point I had to enter the shelter system with my adult son. I know firsthand how a rental subsidy could change the trajectory of a person's life. We went to 2 shelters before being chosen by lottery for an apartment in Williamsburg with the rent subsidy, which has already had 2 revisions to it. And our subsidy now is being subject to being terminated. The allowance that I get from the city FEPS subsidy is what keeps us presently housed. Everyone in our city is suffering from the effects of homelessness. Senator Prasad and Senator Kavanaugh, I was in Albany on Wednesday, and I heard you say yes to HSS. Thank you for your support in that. HSS could open up options that would make living in New York a lot more affordable. The work you and other elected officials do is essential to the eradication of homelessness. We need to say yes to HSS this year. The time for talk is over. The time for action is now. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
So, question. You said your vouchers pending termination?
Yes.
Can you tell us why?
Okay, so we had started out with Link.
Mm-hmm.
It went now to City for HEPS. And because my son did the directives of HRA, and he is now a productive citizen of society and he's working, they're trying to take the subsidy. I'm a person who, I'm almost 60, and I can't afford to go back into shelter. It would be bordering on generational homelessness because not only me, but my daughter and my grandchildren have went through the shelter system. So I'm the progenitor of generational homelessness. My daughter took my grandchildren away, and they're now in North Carolina because they could not afford to stay in New York City. They couldn't find affordable housing here. So the subsidy that they're trying to take from me, I am now in, the adjournment part of it, yeah. And so we're trying to figure out how we can stay in our beautiful home over in Domino Park.
You're living in Domino Park?
Yes, I got chosen for lottery.
God bless you.
Yes, and don't let them take that from me. But the HSS would really
visit
help
Domino Park.
in keeping me in my home. Yes.
And that's in the Social Services Committee. We have been at those discussions.
Yes.
Because too often, those are the stories that we hear. And we're trying to eliminate that issue.
Somebody, 2 families that I know of already that were in my building have already left because they couldn't afford the rent after they took the subsidy. And we do everything that we're supposed to do. We do everything we're in compliance with everything. And so one of the things that could be discussed is how to transition, once this HSS comes into effect, because it's got to happen.
It seems, sometimes we look at a system that we seem to penalize people when they're trying to lift themselves out of poverty. It should not be so, but too often that's what happens, and we're trying to rectify that.
Thank you.
So,
Every question, sir.
Senator Jackson.
So let me, first, you said you were up in Albany lobbying, so thank you for your advocacy. And so when people come into my office, and they're lobbying me, I ask a couple of questions because life is like this. It's up and down, up and down. Hopefully it's improving overall.
Yes.
So what I ask people is, where do you live at? What's your name? And you're my namesake, Jackson. My mother's from Athens, Georgia. That's where Jackson comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to ask you where you live at. You said you live in where? Is it Domino?
I live at 325 Kent Avenue.
Domino Park?
Domino
is that
Park.
a new development or what?
It is one of the new developments of the luxury buildings that I got
'cause
through lottery.
That's
yes.
in Brooklyn. So I don't know Brooklyn that much, but I know Manhattan.
Yes, sir. It's Williamsburg.
But it's a nice place, right?
It's beautiful.
Who's your local representatives there? Who's your state assembly member?
Senator Lentil
Mhm. And your senator?
Senator, where'd she go?
Okay.
I can't remember.
That's okay.
I'm
You see,
sorry.
these are.
Kavanaugh. It's you.
Yes.
It's him.
It's him.
He did it.
And he didn't even speak up. See, he
No,
didn't even help
because
me out.
we want you. We want you.
I'm definitely cutting
as
off Senator
advocates.
Jackson's mic.
Thank you.
We want all of the people that are lobbying to know their representatives,
You're right.
because that's what counts. And so now you know. And what I tell people, and since we're on live, if you don't know who your representative is, go to lwvnyc.org. That stands for League of Women Voters NYC, New York City. And if you put in your address, and then you go to, it says federal, state, and local representatives. So if you say state representative, it will show you Brian's picture and his office number and everything like that. The same thing for everyone. So those out there, lwvnyc.org. And so I say that to you. And then, obviously, you want to keep your home.
Yes, sir.
And you had left after 9/11, and let me tell you, after 9/11, many people. I work down here near the 9/11. I have not signed up for the 9/11 Victims Fund yet. Knock on wood, I don't have any cancer or anything or any signs of cancer, but I got to sign up because I work down there. My office was on 136 Church Street, and my staff was running north because the building was shaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked down at City Hall. So that's anyone who worked below now Canal Street from a certain period of time. So I have to sign up myself. But you know what my question is, I'm curious was, is there any reason, and now I'm going to get personal, any reason you're not working? Because you might have heard my testimony earlier when I said how important it is, housing justice for all, but education is the key to uplift all families, and then opportunity to work to earn some money. And so I really, sometimes I don't ask those questions of people because I don't want to put people on the spot, but those are legitimate questions that come into my mind when I'm dealing with advocates that are coming up and lobbying. So you can comment or you don't have to comment.
No, I don't mind answering. So I'm injured. I have some serious back problems that I have had surgeries on.
Okay.
But now that I'm not working,
Right.
my work is in advocacy, and
I
I
see.
fight for children because it's not fair that they don't have a bed of their own to lay in. I don't think any of you here who have children will want their children to lay in a bed in a shelter that someone else has been in, and God only knows what's going on. They're failing in schools. They're having intimate relationships with people because they don't have the services that they need, the children. And so they're being institutionalized at an early age. They're growing up in this. And a lot of them are returning into shelter with their own children. You know, I work in advocacy. I'm a shelter monitor. I hear so many stories. There's one that really sticks with me is a child who wants and dreams of being an astronaut. When I walked into their unit, he had like the stars and the planets, and it was like, wow. And so he had got an invitation for a weekend trip to go to NASA. Couldn't go, all expenses paid. He couldn't go because he had to be back in shelter because his mom, because in shelter you have to have everybody in the unit at 10 o'clock. So he couldn't go for the weekend. And I think that having dreams deferred like that is a crime. It is a crime against nature. It is a crime against the children that are growing up who are our leaders. They're going to sit in your spot one day.
That's right, and that's what we want them to do.
So.
Well, let me thank you for responding to my questions. And that situation, I guess, as an advocate, I would have gone to DHS, Homeless Services, said, this is an opportunity. You must give this an exception so this child can go to the weekend. I mean, that type of, obviously, that's Monday morning quarterback, you know
Right.
what I mean? But that's what I do. So
Ideally, that
when I
would've
was
been
up there with the network, they were giving out these things that are back on there that says, in homelessness.
Yes.
So that's what, we don't want to see anyone homeless, but the population of homelessness around the state has increased, where not only people are living in shelters, but they're double upping in friends or relatives' homes.
Yes.
And not having their own home. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Senator
Thank you,
Jackson.
Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, and we'll see you in the
Senator
district.
Kavanaugh, and we together.
Yep, thank you. Next up, we have Ahmed El Nene. I hope I'm saying that reasonably accurately. If Ahmed is still here.
Ahmed, are you here? Nope.
Okay. Then Polly Wiesberger.
Polly, are you here?
Okay, no longer here.
Is there anyone else?
Right. So we had called earlier Dennis Hanreddy of Mount Vernon United Tenants, and let me just ask: is Rashida Tyler of Kingston Tenants Union here? We'd called earlier. Okay. Mr. Hanreddy, come on up.
Anyone else? No one else, right, Brian?
That's the last. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Senator Kavanaugh and Senator Jackson, thank you for hosting this. It's very, very important. And especially I want to thank you, Senator Kavanaugh, for your leadership last year in passing the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act of 2019. That was a fabulous, fabulous law.
Thank you.
I mean, it's really helped. I'm the director of my name is Dennis Hannerty. I'm the director of Mount Vernon United Tenants. I've done that for over 35 years. So I have a pretty good understanding of the landlord-tenant stuff, especially as it relates to our housing in Mount Vernon. Unfortunately, very often when people think about the rent laws, they think it's solely a New York City-based service. But we have in Westchester, Rockland, and Nassau, you know, we have thousands of tenants who are covered under the law. Westchester County, we have over 34,000 tenants who are covered under the ETPA in Westchester. Mount Vernon alone, we have over 6,000. That law is the biggest help to my office in doing most of the work we do. The great majority of work is eviction prevention. We stop over 150 evictions every year. It's most especially easy to do when we have people under the regulations. Unregulated tenants is very, very difficult. We're able to stop some, but it's the rent laws that really provide the basis of all our supports. And that's what, you know, the last year's raft of protection improvements is so phenomenal. what I liked about the notice for this, and also is the question that talks about housing insecurity. That's a phrase that I often use. Most people don't, normally use that phrase, housing insecurity, but it's a pervasive feeling among so many people, and it's really a debilitating experience for people. People who are facing eviction, they never know month by month whether they're going to get brought to court, and it really impacts all of their quality of life, their jobs, their school, their family activities. You really can never be yourself if you're always worried about the marshal coming in next month. So I'm really glad you utilized that phrase in this hearing, housing insecurity, because I think we all should use that phrase more frequently, because so many people are really on the edge. And when you're on the edge of housing, if you don't know, I think housing insecurity underlies all other economic security issues. You can't be a fully functioning person if you're not secure in your housing, if you don't know that you're going to have a place to stay tonight, tomorrow night, next week, next month. In my office, like I said, a great majority of our work is eviction prevention. We have a small staff, 3 or 4 people, and then we have a lot of volunteers. But we have hundreds of people come in every month, facing eviction. We do what we can, trying to rustle up money, trying to negotiate with landlords. Even this morning, it's tough for me to come down here to be out of my office. I did an order to show cause before I left this morning to stop an eviction. I mean, that's just a regular thing. Our office is, the phone rings off the hook. There's people coming in morning, noon, and night about the stuff. What I wanted to bring to your guys' attention, especially as it relates to Westchester County, Westchester just recently in November released this report. It was a long time coming, called the Westchester County Housing Needs Assessment. In my prepared statements, there's a number of different data that's represented there, but I would encourage people to try to get this. It's 175 pages packed worth of facts and figures about that. They're really kind of shocking how bad the conditions are. People very often think of Westchester County, they think of it's all a leafy place with old big mansions and stuff like that. But in all of the 6 cities, we have majorities of poor, low-income people in the center cities, and they're all experiencing the same kind of difficulties New York City tenants have. Most of whom are low income, paying increasing percentages of their of their incomes for rent. So people are struggling on a day-to-day basis in leafy Westchester. So people shouldn't have that image that everybody in Westchester is rich. Most of the people are working class and struggling to get by, and the increasing rents are really hurting us. Mount Vernon, we have 47% of our housing was built before 1940. So we have a whole bunch of things. Mount Vernon is like 99-point-something% developed. There's no developable land. We have old housing stock, and we have housing that's completely occupied. So landlords have no incentive to fix things, because they know if they throw somebody out or somebody leaves, there's like 5 people waiting to rent that apartment. So the system is set up to, the market that there's there is just really not a market. It's a buyer's market. The landlord has all the seller's market. The landlord has all the pieces of paper in this thing. Tenants are always behind the 8 ball. So the rent laws are the most valuable thing we have, and we're so happy that what you did last year, and we're hoping this year we get the good cause eviction also. The one last page I have on my presentation has some of our eviction data, how many cases have been brought in court. Last year in the county, in just the 6 cities of Westchester County, there was 9,344 cases brought in those 6 cities in Westchester County. 8,069 which are non-payment cases. In Mount Vernon, we had over 2,000 non-payment cases. You can imagine what it's like in there. People are getting churned in, churned out. I had a meeting yesterday. I know New York City has it. They have the right to counsel law. I'm a part of a coalition in Westchester trying to pass a similar law in Westchester County that we can have a right to counsel. Because so many people go to court, they're unrepresented, they don't know, they're forced to sign agreements that they know they cannot live up to, but just so they don't get thrown out that day, they sign these things, and they're always behind the 8 ball. So I just want to let this committee know, and Senator Kavanaugh especially, that the conditions that tenants experience in New York City are virtually no different than what we experience up in Westchester. And I'm not really, I can't speak for Nassau and Rockland, but I know Westchester, the 6 cities that we have covered by the law, are really, really hurting. And I would encourage, I'll give you the information is listed. It's Westchester County Housing Needs Assessment. It was prepared by the Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress, but it's chock full of really startling and kind of shocking statistics about how bad the situation is in Westchester.
Great. So thank you. We will review that document. We also have your written testimony. And just to say more generally, as I mentioned at the outset, we had a roundtable in Nassau County with the Committee on Children and Families and the Committee on Social Services and Housing to talk about homelessness, in that case particularly how it affected youth. And we're having a roundtable in a couple of weeks in Sullivan County. But today's testimony has been more heavily focused on New York City because of the location of this hearing. But we do appreciate your being here to articulate something that can't be said too many times, which is that homelessness and housing insecurity and rent burden really is a statewide and indeed a nationwide issue at this point. And we are working towards solutions that really address the sort of ubiquity of those problems and also the distinctive features of those problems in each locality. So the programs that we're talking about today are intended both to make sure that resources are available everywhere and also that they can be tailored to the local needs. So I thank you again for your testimony and for all of your work and advocacy in Westchester.
Well, thank you. And we do have a very good state delegation from Westchester. Your leader, has been a long-time pro-housing advocate, so she knows what the issues are. Virtually all of our delegation is on our side. They're very, very supportive, so I thank you for that as well.
Yes, I can attest, having been in many conversations in the last year, actually in my 2 years in the Senate, but especially last year in the majority as we took on these issues, all of the senators from Westchester have been incredibly supportive and really working toward solutions. And certainly our leader, Andrew Stewart-Cousins, is somebody we take the lead from on this issue and so many others. And
our county executive is a former state senator, George Latimer, who's really been very supportive on all of these.
Yeah, I served with George Latimer in the Assembly before he moved on to the Senate, and he's also a terrific advocate.
George and I played Little League ball together from Mount Vernon, so we go way back.
Wow. Okay, that's great to hear. I will send him your regards.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, unless there's anybody here who was expecting to testify who has not had an opportunity to do so, seeing no one, we will adjourn this hearing again with great thanks to all of the staff who have helped put it together and my colleagues, and yes, to our leader, Andrew Stewart-Cousins. We adjourn this hearing and look forward to this being an ongoing conversation as the budget process and the remainder of the session unfolds. Thank you.